All right, my watch says it's 6:30. We are in City Hall, 1311 Chestnut Street. We have posted a meeting for tonight according to all the rules and regulations of the state of Texas. We have all council members present, and I call us to order. We are very privileged and pleased tonight to have with us to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance to the American flag, our new mayor-elect, Connie Schrader. Please come forward, Connie.
I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, Connie. More to come. And also to lead us in the pledge to the Texas flag, Councilmember-elect Bill Ennis.
Honor the Texas flag.
I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state, under God, one and indivisible. And to lead us in an invocation, the Reverend Paula Camby of Good Shepherd Lutheran Church in Bastrop. Paula, thank you for being here.
Thank you for inviting me.
The Lord be with you.
Also with you.
Let us pray. Dear God, we thank you so much for the city of Bastrop, its home. We thank you for the state of Texas, and we thank you for the United States of America. And dear God, we thank you for our world. We come before you tonight humbly, asking your help, your guidance, as we move ahead in these days. We thank you so very much for the leaders who have been serving this city so well and so proudly. Dear God, continue to be with them and give them new work to do for you. And dear God, we thank you so much for the new people who will be coming forward to lead this city. Be with them, take care of them, give them patience, give them wisdom, guide them as you would have them go, dear God, to take care of the people of this area. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Pastor Camby. Please be seated. And I will turn the presentation portion over to the city manager.
At this time, we are going to acknowledge the service and contributions of our outgoing city council members. And I think that it is important for us to, before we do that, recognize and appreciate the role of elected officials in our government. The city charter, which serves as our constitution, appoints or requires the election of council members and mayor to serve as the policy piece of our government. And it's always interesting when people sign up to run, their perspective of what they think they're getting into, and then you ask them if you were to do an exit interview of how did it work out for you, oftentimes there's a huge gap between the impressions and the reality. But at the end of the day, regardless of whether or not you agree or disagree with their politics, these three individuals have done something most of us would never do, and that's sign up to run. And our government requires that. And I don't think people appreciate the amount of time, energy, I call it noodling, because you're never not council, you're never not city manager. And every problem is something that you own because you're passionate about your community. So as I tell people, when you sign up to become an elected official, or you sign up to be an appointed position, you never get a vacation, because you're that 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year, until the system sees fit to replace you. And depending on how long you've been here, it is a grateful moment to pass the torch. Because truly, being in an elected position is much like an Olympic marathon. And you literally are in charge of that baton while you're running. And when your time with that baton is over, you are grateful to pass it to the next person with the hope that you've left it better than you found it while entrusted with your care. Excuse me. And I believe we can say that for the three folks that are ending their term with us this evening, that they can all collectively say that. As I was interviewing for this position, the one thing that was very clear is, regardless of the positions that they found themselves either on the same side or against, the one thing that they could collectively all agree on is their passion and love for this community. And I think as we reflect on their contributions, we can all agree that that is the case. So what I'm going to do is individually recognize the contributions of each of the members that are going off this evening. We're going to then make a number of presentations, and then we're going to ask them to make whatever remarks they want and be seated. So it will be a little lengthy, but they certainly have earned it with the tenure that they have provided us. So we're going to start with Councilmember Kay McAnally. One of the things that I requested was, because I'm new to the community, that I was interested in what each one of these members of our council reflected upon as things they're most proud of, or they're most excited to leave behind. And it was wonderful for me to get to read the things that were important. Now, before I say my remarks, I know it goes unsaid, but I will say this. All of our council understand that this didn't happen in a vacuum, that this is a collective work of a lot of people in the community. So when I give them credit, it's not that they are taking sole credit, because they all understand that they didn't do it in a vacuum, but at every project, their roles changed. Sometimes it's planting the seed. Sometimes it's doing the heavy lifting and doing the work. Sometimes it's being a cheerleader. And sometimes it's just being an advocate, or sometimes it's just watching your idea blossom without, because you've done your work. So whatever the case may be, and sometimes in a given project that role changes. But with that little asterisk on that, let's talk about Councilmember McAnally. One of the things that she was instrumental in helping put together was the Bastrop Vision Task Force. And that's a legacy that we will feel for a number of years to come, because two of the main projects that came from this task force, number one is the comprehensive plan that was adopted last November with a shelf life of 20 years. So that vision from the Vision Task Force will absolutely have a long-lasting impression on this community. Now, the great thing about that was that the comprehensive plan became the community's plan, with a lot of fingers, a lot of people sitting at the table owning the vision for Bastrop. But it wouldn't have started without the Vision Task Force saying, you know what, as a community, we need to start talking about our future. The other thing that the Bastrop Vision Task Force brought forward was the destination marketing organization concept to Bastrop. And I will personally tell you that's one of the more exciting things that I was delighted to find Bastrop talking about when I got here. We are limited only by our imagination with the direct marketing organization for Bastrop. So there is really no telling where that concept and that organization will lead us in the future. Two things that we can thank the Bastrop Vision Task Force, thanks to Councilmember McAnally, for leaving us with. Another thing is the Bastrop in arts and public places, some specific art that's near and dear to Mrs. McAnally. The first is purchased bears and eagles to honor our students and teachers and other pieces of city-owned art. You know, one of the things that I know was important when I was touring the community to determine whether or not I wanted to live here, and the one thing I consistently hear from our visitors is the amount of public art in a community of 8,600 people. It's extraordinarily impressive. In fact, I was at our community meeting at the prison last week, and the bear art in front of the building got more conversation about people wanting to get their picture taken and post that on their Facebook page. What a wonderful way to advertise the city of Bastrop free of charge, because we've got art. The art in front of the fire department is another piece that every time I ride by, there's some small child getting their picture taken, learning to love the fire service. In addition to that, we have transitional art. Sculptures displayed around town that have been lent to the city through national art competitions. If we weren't known as an art destination, we wouldn't ever be considered for a place for that kind of public art to be displayed. And again, that's another reason to love Bastrop. It's another reason to come back to Bastrop. The Culture Walk that is currently being developed in Bob Bryant Park is another thing that Bastrop Art and Public Places is doing that is a love and passion of Councilmember McAnally's that, again, will live for decades and decades to come. The third thing that is near and dear to Councilmember McAnally is actually going to occur tonight on our agenda, and that is recognizing the contributions of the Mexican-American people of the city of Bastrop who fought for equalities in our school system all the way to the Supreme Court. And you may know that case as Minerva Delgado versus the Bastrop Independent School District et al. And that really was the cornerstone to integration of our Mexican-American children into our school system that really probably helped with the Brown versus the Board of Education that made a difference in integration of schools as we know it. So we're going to honor that contribution this evening with a park named in Ms. Delgado's honor. What started this journey was Councilmember McAnally's passion for telling that story, and with the help of former Senator Barriatos, we were recently notified that an undertold historical marker will actually be erected here in Bastrop on the original school site of the Mena Elementary School. The Delgado Park, which you will learn this evening, is about a block and a half from the original school site. So this is a project that she started her term with and a project that she'll end her term with. So I would say probably her favorite. So. In addition, Legislative House Bill 3615. She worked with Legislatures and Hoteliers Association to allow hotel occupancy tax funds to be used for rodeo arenas. And we happen to have one out at Mayfest Park. And this will allow us to ensure those types of activities and sports activities, rodeos, and things like that are still offered as programs to our community. So that is a very important contribution as well. And then the last thing, and she had a list, I made her pick 5, was the Bastrop Film Commission, which really is a concierge service for film and TV makers, which has brought thousands of dollars to local charities and saved hundreds in city expenses for handling paperwork and permits for the industry. And I will tell you that that film commission is still alive and well today. And thanks to Ms. Debbie Moore, who serves in that capacity for us, we get calls routinely that we still provide answers to those questions. And that's so important as staff. We don't have that background, so she's able to bridge that gap. So that is something that's still alive and well for us at this point in time. So that just is a very brief summary of some of the contributions of Councilmember Kay McAnally. So at this point in time, I'm going to ask our Director of Public Safety, Steve Adcock, to come forward, and he's going to make a presentation on behalf of our public safety, and then I will make some additional presentations. So, Chief?
What I want to say is this council, all of them, has always been very supportive of public safety. Without the support of the council, it makes our job very difficult. For police and fire, any and every time we've talked to them, they always put public safety on the forefront. So I think that that's one reason why, in my opinion, we have a very good police department and a fire department. So I wanted to publicly thank Ms. McAnally for her support from us all of these years that she's been on the council. So thank you.
So in addition, every one of our council members are going to get a monogrammed shirt so that they will be able to acknowledge their service, and this is a tradition at the city. You probably have seen some of the former council members, but that goes back to acknowledging that service. They're doing things we wouldn't do, so we need to continue to appreciate that long after they're here. So in each one of the sacks, they're going to get their own shirt. Because Ms. McAnally is female, and I know William and Mayor can care less about flowers. We are presenting Ms. McAnally with a bouquet of flowers because I love flowers.
Oh, my goodness.
And then the formal presentation for their service on council is this really pretty engraved trophy, for lack of a better word, that has the official seal of the city of Bastrop, and it says, Kay McAnally, in recognition and appreciation of your dedication and tireless service during your tenure of 8 years on the Bastrop City Council and your service to the citizens of Bastrop, 2009 to 2017, council member awarded the 9th day of May, 2017. So, thank you very much.
Well, I don't know what to say. I'm kind of blown away. Thank you to our new city manager. And most of all, I want to say thank you to the incredible volunteers and amazing staff of this city. I came forth with a few seeds, and they took those seeds and made them into trees, oak trees. And when I think about Bastrop and the 8 years and the ups and downs and the good times and the hard times and all the people back here, we've all worked so hard together to bring so many things to Bastrop. I cannot thank everybody enough for trusting me and supporting me the way you have. And like I said, especially the staff and the volunteers who have done so much. and I want to say that the bookends are, that's what's really got me. The first project and the last project have finally come together. I never thought it would happen. That Delgado Park is just a real, it's just made my day. So, thank you all so much.
Well, the next member we want to honor is Mayor Pro Tem Willie De La Rosa. And when you have contributed a grand total of 27 years of service, you don't get to tell us what your favorites are. The mayor worked with the 4 mayors that Mayor Pro Tem De La Rosa has worked under, and here is what they had to say about Mayor Pro Tem De La Rosa. And in the context of the amount of time that I indicated this job took, I want y'all to think about Mayor Pro Tem De La Rosa's 27 years of service. Willie spent nearly 2,000 hours, the equivalent of almost 3 months, seated in a council chamber during formal meetings, dealing with various issues, not to mention the many hours spent caring for a council member's other related duties, and not counting the time spent during 9 years as a director of the Bastrop Economic Development Corporation. This should give the public a picture of someone who is wholly dedicated to the welfare of Bastrop and its citizens for the past 3 years. That is worth a round of applause. On the council, Mayor Pro Tem has offered significant leadership, frequently serving as Mayor Pro Tem, employing an exemplary memory, for which I have come to count on in my short time here as well, always giving attention to details, analyzing items succinctly, and supporting growth, seeking modernization of city services, and renewal of aging infrastructure. He understands the budget process better than anyone outside the staff, with the ability to see how one project could affect another, and insisting that we keep taxes low and expenses reasonable. As an innovative thinker, Willie supported and helped achieve many new and needed actions, including the creation of the Economic Development Corporation, producing an effective partnership with the Hyatt Regency, crafting the original charter, making Bastrop a home rule city, regulating growth in areas outside the city, developing new zoning guidelines, creating an historic landmark preservation program, and fostering a partnership with WCID number 2 to extend wastewater treatment services to the residents of Tahitian Village and facilitating road and street improvements there. Above all, Willie De La Rosa has been an unexcelled guardian of citizen well-being, and to that I can testify with an amen. He has employed an extraordinary resolve in a very personal way to respond to and find solutions for issues raised by many hundreds of residents seeking relief and issuing complaints of all sizes and shapes. He has served the people of Bastrop and the Bastrop City Council with integrity, courtesy, and unqualified success. So with this, I'm going to ask the chief to join me again and ask Mayor Pro Tem De La Rosa to join us at the podium.
I may have still been in high school when he first started on the council, so Mr. De La Rosa has also been a very big supporter of us, and I just want to thank you from all of us at the fire department, police department.
And just like Councilmember McAnally, Mayor Pro Tem gets his own shirt. No flowers for Willie. I didn't think he'd appreciate it. Just saying. But I also want to acknowledge Mayor Pro Tem with his trophy that says, again, with the seal of Bastrop, Willie De La Rosa, in recognition and appreciation of your dedication and tireless service during your tenure of 27 years, which includes your previous service from 1989 through 2009 on the Bastrop City Council and your services to the citizens of Bastrop, including council member during 2012 to 2017. On this date, May 9th, 2017. Let's recognize Mayor Pro Tem De La Rosa.
I just want to say I want to thank the citizens that gave me all the support over the year to come in, and I tried to the best of my ability to represent everyone in this community, whether you had a small issue or a large issue. But I see former Mayor Tom Scott that I served with for 10 years, and another council member, Joe Bill, that I served with, and I never look at a thing that says I accomplished this, I accomplished that. I always thought we as a group accomplished a lot of things that were a benefit to the community citywide. So I leave tonight feeling good because we have a new city manager, a good city manager, but she has a good staff and employees that I know are going to take care of the city. So I look forward to seeing you all down the road. Thank you.
All right. At this point in time, I want to acknowledge the contributions of outgoing Mayor Ken Keslis. You know, one of the things that is unique about the charter of Bastrop is the mayor doesn't vote. The mayor is the chief presiding officer. And that is really a unique role, and one that I think you really have to appreciate. Because you don't get to vote, you have to do an awful lot of educating. You have to do an awful lot of communicating. You have to do an awful lot of cheerleading because you don't get to vote. And that really is, in my opinion, one of the things that just underscores the passion that's required to run for office, particularly the position of mayor. Because as council member, you have power, you get to vote. As mayor, you don't get to vote. So it really boils down to you love the community. And you want to make a difference in the community by providing a level of leadership, a level of passion, advocacy, facilitator, whatever the role requires. And I think that that really, in my opinion, needs to be underscored because you don't have the typical power that most mayors in most cities have. So knowing that all you get to do is lead, guide, and talk, I think these are really important contributions to acknowledge. When I visited with the mayor, these were some of the things that were important to him as he acknowledged how he's left it better than he found it. And that was effectively guiding critical transitions in leadership. And again, you don't vote, so that's one of the things the community counts on. And so there was a difficult process of moving from control by a long-term city manager and city attorney through a period of interim office holders onto securing two highly professional and eminently qualified individuals. Those are his words, not mine. I did not write this. Who are now in place to partner with future councils to continue to make Bastrop an excellent place to live. You know, one of the things I want to say about that is this. It's easy when it's easy, but it's really difficult when it's tough. It becomes a thankless job. And we've talked about the hours that it takes in form of volunteerism, but we don't talk about the, my words, not his, the abuse that goes into dealing with the negativity. And it's not a question of whether it was deserved or not. That's not even the point. The point is that that's part of what you have to do with that position. So when you see somebody that's still passionate about the position, still passionate at the end of the day about their community, and in spite of all of that, did that, you really have to say, thank you for doing something nobody else would do. His participation made some things more inclusive and reflective, and that's reforming the makeup of the Bastrop Economic Development Corporation, improving its effectiveness, recruiting and appointing to other boards and commissions citizens that more closely reflect the demographic nature, ethically, racially, by gender, age, neighborhood of residence, and how long they've lived here. Providing city council invocations that represented all faith perspectives. And personally, I'm really pleased with that, because it's easy sometimes to appreciate people that believe like we do and think like we do, but we're an inclusive community, and it's important for us to make everybody that lives here feel welcome. And as a mayor and council member, he fostered important changes that expanded a small town perspective to what is more consistent with that of a larger city. And I think a lot of us focus on the population from the day perspective, or night perspective really, which is about 8,600 people. But when you think about the tourists in and out of our community, you think about the traffic counts on State Highway 71, we're really a community of 50 or 60,000 people. And that's two worlds we have to blend and make work. So that is important. In addition to providing that consistent perspective from a small town to a larger perspective, preserved what is best about our past. We've built a new city hall and convention center, engaging a vital partnership with the YMCA, so we have much needed programs for citizens and to save the state park swimming pool for closure, helping create excellent facilities for a visitor center, museum, and an arts center, and developing for council and staff modern procedures, rules, and codes that better meet the needs of a growing city. The mayor worked hard for 8 years to respond to citizen needs and to help improve and add to essential infrastructure and planning, providing better streets, electric department, public safety, water, wastewater delivery. These are all essential services that we just can't take for granted. As I say, if you flushed your toilet and ran your water today, well, you got the local government to thank for that. And so that really is where we start and end. Obtaining a secure long-term water supply. We can't live without water, and it's something that we ought to be able to take for granted, and a long-term water supply helps us do that. Planning for a city building with dual purpose of housing citizen programs and those needing an emergency shelter, paying appropriate attention to the needs of the citizens living in the north area of Bastrop, and adopting the 20-year comprehensive plan that provides a basic blueprint for years ahead, complete with a mechanism to ensure constant reference so as to not be left dusty on a shelf, which would be a tragedy for sure. Structuring water and wastewater rates to allow for continuing improvement of aging pipes. Creating the rudiments of a destination marketing corporation to advance our tourism industry. Taking full advantage of income from the hotel motel occupancy tax and the windfall from the Hyatt Regency Lost Pines, a business that I think we can all appreciate, makes an extraordinary difference in the lives of our community, and certainly is a tremendous asset for sure. And all the while doing this without raising taxes and in fact lowering the ad valorem tax. All of that without being able to vote. So at this point in time, I'm going to ask the chief to join us and ask the mayor if he would come down to the podium.
One thing that Ms. Humble said that I totally agree with is the three of these outgoing council members and mayor, nobody has a passion for this town like they do, and it's refreshing to see. I was born in Texas. I got to Bastrop as quick as I could. So I enjoy reading the mayor's writings about the history of Bastrop. So I do like that. And we also wanted to thank the mayor from the police department and from the fire department, from public safety, on the support that he's always given us.
I want to present, the mayor will get his shirt, and we're going to present the mayor with his recognition that says Ken Kessless, in recognition and appreciation of your dedication and tireless service during your tenure of 8 years on the Bastrop City Council and your service to the citizens of Bastrop. He served as council member from 2009 to 2013 and mayor from 2014 to 2017, and we present this today, Your Honor, on May 9th, 2017.
Linda, thank you, and thank you for doing this. Thank you for doing this on a night when we don't have to share it with those that everybody's really interested in, that is the folks that are coming on. I had a chance, as Linda said, to share my thoughts about Willie, and there was a portion of that in what she read. But I didn't get a chance to comment on Kay, and I want to say, Kay, there's something that was mentioned that was not exaggerated, amplified enough, and that is the rodeo grounds. She mentioned it briefly, but here's what really happened. The city manager, Mike Talbot, and I worked to work out an agreement with the homecoming committee that had charge of the rodeo arena, and we worked a deal where it was really better for the city to take it over, and we did, and the council agreed to it. And Mike and I had all kind of high hopes that now that we've got it, we'll use some of our hotel occupancy tax money to fix it up and add a roof on it. Then we found out, that was not legal. And then comes to the rescue Kay McAnally. And what you don't know is she single-handedly worked with our legislators to work through the session 2 years ago to provide a rider on a bill that applied only to us, only to Bastrop, so that we could take advantage of hotel occupancy tax money to work on our rodeo arena. We're now going to be able to put a roof on it. We couldn't have with hot money otherwise, and I can guarantee you that's going to be a legacy that continues for a long time because it plays so well into the possibilities for our tourism industry. So Kay, I want to thank you in a way that I think deserves more than what you got before. Any of us stands on the shoulders of those that came before. And we hope that we've stooped down enough and raised up enough that those that follow us will have a chance to reach to see the next horizon. I have no doubt at all that that will happen with the council that follows. We're going to have a mayor that's going to be not only history-making, but going to do a wonderful job with a great council. We still have a decision to make about the final council member. But that council will continue a tradition of 185 years in this city that is full of everything that Linda talked about tonight, about service to our community, about loving and caring for Bastrop. And there's nothing that any of us going off could wish for more than the fact that those who follow us will continue in that tradition. I know they will. I look forward to having an adult beverage and my pajamas on, watching you all on television in the future. And I know you'll do well, and I know I will enjoy the show. Thank you all very much. Okay, now, by order of the city manager, we're going to take a recess.
We are going to have a reception, and there's cake and punch, and so we're going to celebrate and say our thanks to our outgoing council members for about 20 minutes, and then we'll come back and complete the business of the city.
And I call on the Mayor Pro Tem for a point of some personal privilege.
I knew when I started mentioning, when I saw Mayor Scott in the back of the room, I was looking around, and I neglected to mention Councilmember Harris that was sitting on the front row, because when I talked about our accomplishments, about saying I was always we, and she was a part of a good group that did a lot of good things in the 6 years I remember serving with her. So I don't know if she's still here or not, but I didn't mean to overlook you when I called out the other members.
Thank you, Willie. We are privileged in this community to have an extraordinary institution called the Bastrop River Collegiate Academy. It's just a brilliant idea. And I've had the luck of being down there with the kids several times, and they're wonderful. And on top of all that is a great teacher who's going to come to us tonight to help them give us a presentation, Megan Brandon.
Good evening, City Council. My name is Megan Brandon, and I am a 9th grade teacher at Colorado River Collegiate Academy, the early college high school in Bastrop ISD. I had the privilege of attending a civic workshop at the White House last summer, and while there, I met a gentleman named Scott Warren, who is the founder of an organization called Generation Citizen. Generation Citizen believes that youth and young people should be action civic minded. Unfortunately, the way that our school system is, civics are not taught as much as they should be anymore. The emphasis is on, big government and not so much local government. So Generation Citizen firmly believes in getting students out and active members in their community, therefore creating better citizens as they age. I have several students from my 3rd period class with me. I have Madison, Jessica, Annie Jo, and Aaron, and they have put together a presentation on a project that is near and dear to all of our hearts. When working with Generation Citizen this year, these students realized that there are not a lot of leadership opportunities for youth in Bastrop outside of the school district. And so they have come up with the idea of starting a youth advisory council working with the city government. So I'm going to let them lead their presentation and tell you a little bit more about that.
We are 9th grade students from Colorado River Collegiate Academy, an early college high school in BISD. This semester, through our Social Studies Research Methods class, we have had the opportunity to work with a program called Generation Citizen, in which we advocate for youth. This is our Generation Citizen team. As you can see, on the ends of the photograph are our democracy coaches, Tav and Claudia, who attend St. Edward's.
So what Generation Citizen is, it's an active civics program that allows students to recognize issues in their community and then address those issues or problems with student-driven projects. Our issue that we found was that, like Ms. Brandon said, we don't have a lot of youth activities really in our community to really get the youth of Bastrop involved with each other. And our goal is to create a youth advisory council in order to really promote that collaboration with the youth in the community of Bastrop.
In our research, we reached out to pre-existing youth advisory council coordinators, and thankfully they were more than willing to help us. And with their guidance and help, we were allowed to have set and just more information and knowledge and guidance to to set some goals and some outlines to further our project.
As we were talking to people, we started to figure out that not all the time can we recruit through the community, that we should recruit through the school district. So one of the people that we talked to and Ms. Brandon has had a meeting with was Dr. Christy Lee. She is here tonight, and she is the head director of the communications, and she is willing to work with the school district and commute and have more students be more involved. Through this, we did a 5-question Likert scale through the BISD, through schools, and one of the questions that we asked was, I feel that Bastrop has enough youth activities. The majority of the circle has shown that they strongly disagree and are neutral about it, meaning we don't really have enough already, only just in the school. Another thing that we asked was, I'm involved with the community of Bastrop. Majority of the circle, once again, is completely filled with disagree or neutral. Now, we found that it was a lot harder to find things to do outside of school for the community and just things around like athletics and things like that. Another question that we asked is, I know where to look for leadership opportunities in Bastrop. Majority of the circle, once again, is disagree and strongly disagree, meaning they don't know where we can find opportunities like a leadership and be able to start somewhere and learn how to build up. This one, we found out there are not enough leadership opportunities for high school students in Bastrop. We only really have student council and small things like that in our schools, but we don't really actually do anything outside of that. So, of course, they disagreed. And our last question that we asked is, high school students can benefit from learning about local government. We mainly focus on federal governments and big things like that instead of small things like our community and all the benefits that we could get. And majority of them said agree and strongly agree.
So, with the pre-existing Youth Advisory Council coordinators, we got to interview them and to speak with them to get some more information and some guidance. What they said, or we pulled some quotes from what they said, and how we took this was, with the Youth Advisory Council, children or youth get to actively take part in the community more than they could have before. And with a Youth Advisory Council, leadership opportunities can rise and benefit anyone and everyone, especially youth, because they need the leadership opportunities to help build and grow themselves. And with a youth advisory council, their voices are being heard, and because everyone notices issues, it is amazing that we get this amazing opportunity to have our voices heard.
The conclusion for this. Our goal is that hopefully by the end of next year that we can figure out all the kinks and the bumps in the road for all this to finally come together and start recruitment. Through this, we've learned a lot more than we did at the beginning of our freshman year. We learned more about our community. We learned more about how to get out there and help. And that's a big thing that we're trying to promote and see other students that are committed to this community and committed to everything that we do in Bastrop.
We put together just a short video of some interviews from students and staff.
People higher up in the district or in the school to see if they can become something more than just ideas.
I think student government is a way for students to have a voice within the school. It's a way not only to practice working in a group, but practice working in a group toward a goal that should benefit everybody in the school.
It's like the people that are selected to go, like, present for us, like us as the students.
I've been a part of other cities or towns that have youth advisory councils. I think that it's a good avenue and a good outlet for students, leadership opportunities for them to kind of mimic and model government officials so that they understand and learn how local government works.
A student government is like student council working together for decisions in school.
An opportunity for students to take an active part in what happens at their school. The people who serve in the capacity of student and the student government can represent their classmates. And so when issues of importance come up in the student body, those representatives can help fully address those issues with administration or with teachers.
Thank you very much.
Thank you all for the presentation, and maybe there's a little connection you could do with city government, and I bet that the council that's going to follow this one will be very eager to help you out. There's some way to do that. And also, as you learn about what you're working on in terms of leadership, there won't be too long where there'll be some spots up here available for you, so keep it in mind. Thank y'all so much.
Thank you.
And the city manager has been working with this group, wants to add some comments.
One of the wonderful things about this is the fact that they are bringing this idea to us. So often adults want students and youth to get involved, and we don't have the conduit to make that happen successfully long term. So we were delighted by a couple of things. One, that we were approached by Mrs. Brandon and went and met with her students, and very clearly they had done their homework. Dr. Lee's participation in this ensures that we get a slate of youth that are serious about participating and making this happen. So as part of the learning process of government, they're actually going to research how to put together an ordinance for a youth advisory council. They're going to determine how many members they would like, what their roles and responsibilities are, how they're going to elect their officers, how they're going to stagger their terms so that the institutional knowledge is passed from one year to the other, and that's going to be their project. And once they get that complete, then they will come back and present that to the council that is seated here, asking for the Youth Advisory Commission to be formed. And at that point in time, the Parks and Recreation Department will be the staff liaison, recognizing that the youth of today are not interested in just athletics. So the encouragement for me is that we're now going to have the participants of the program guiding the development of the program, and that always ensures much greater success. So the reason you didn't see the instrument to make this happen tonight is that's part of their research. So once they do their homework and decide what they want, then they will come back and pitch it yet again. So we're delighted and look forward to continued partnerships.
Thank you all. We want to highlight three particular aspects of our common life with proclamations tonight. First one, whereas an estimated 1.5 million Americans suffer from lupus, a chronic inflammatory autoimmune disease that can affect various parts of the body, especially the skin, joints, blood, and kidneys. And whereas lupus can be difficult to diagnose because its symptoms are similar to those of many other diseases, and major gaps exist in understanding the causes and consequences. And whereas the Lupus Foundation of America, Lone Star Chapter, is part of a national force devoted to solving the cruel mystery of lupus while providing caring support to those who suffer from its brutal impact. And whereas the chapter rallied the city of Bastrop community to wear the color purple and to further unify the support for those living with the disease, and whereas awareness is vital to raising funds for research for those affected by lupus, and it is our responsibility as a community to advocate on their behalf and to further encourage educational programs so everyone affected by lupus can have an improved quality of life. Now, therefore, I, Ken Kessless, by virtue of the authority vested in me as mayor of the city of Bastrop, Texas, do proclaim May 19, 2017 as Put on Purple Day throughout the city of Bastrop, and urge all citizens to support the cause of raising awareness of lupus so that we can have a world with no lupus. And I have set my hand and seal on this document. Do we have someone from the chapter present tonight? I'm going to give this to the city manager and let her distribute it to the appropriate persons, and I call on you to bear in mind the message of that proclamation. Secondly, whereas public works infrastructure, facilities, and services provide in our communities a very integral part of our citizens' health, safety, and well-being. And whereas such facilities and services could not be provided without the dedicated effort of public works professionals, engineers, managers, and employees at all levels of government and in the private sector, who are responsible for planning, building operation, and maintenance of transportation, water supply, water treatment, solid waste systems, public buildings, and other infrastructures and facilities essential to serve our citizens. And whereas it is in the public interest for the citizens, civic leaders, and children of our country to understand and appreciate public works programs in their communities. And whereas the quality and effectiveness of these facilities, as well as their planning, design, and construction, are dependent upon the efforts and skill of public works officials. And whereas the year 2017 marks the 57th annual National Public Works Week sponsored by the American Public Works Association, now therefore let it be proclaimed that I, Mayor Ken Kessless, on behalf of the city of Bastrop, to proclaim the week of May 21 through 27, 2017 as National Public Works Week in the city of Bastrop. And I have signed this and the seal has been affixed. I will invite Trey or whoever you want, or your whole group, everybody to come forward and receive this, please. Marty, thank you. Thank you, sir. Great job. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Glad to have you on Thank you very much. So, let's do that. And thirdly, whereas citizens of Bastrop gather to recognize and honor our law enforcement officials for their faithful service and sacrifice while protecting our community and safeguarding our democracy, and whereas there are more than 900,000 sworn law enforcement officials serving in communities across the United States, including the dedicated members of the Bastrop Police Department, and whereas nearly 60,000 assaults against law enforcement officers are reported each year, resulting in approximately 16,000 injuries. And whereas, since the first recorded death in 1791, more than 20,000 law enforcement officers in the United States have made the ultimate sacrifice and been killed in the line of duty, including one member of the Bastrop Police Department. And whereas the names of these dedicated public servants are engraved on the walls of the National Law Enforcement Officers Memorial in Washington, D.C. And whereas 38 fallen heroes have been added to the National Law Enforcement Officers Memorial this spring, one of which was killed in the state of Texas, and including 144 officers killed in the line of duty in 2016. And whereas the service and sacrifice of all officers killed in the line of duty will be honored during the National Law Enforcement Officers Memorial Fund's 29th Annual Candlelight Vigil on the evening of May 15, 2017. And whereas May 15 is designated as Peace Officer Memorial Day in honor of all fallen officers and their families, and U.S. flags should be flown at half-staff. Now therefore be it proclaimed that I, Mayor Ken Kessless, do hereby proclaim May 14, 2017 through May 20, 2017 as Police Week in Bastrop, Texas, and publicly salute the service of law enforcement officers in the community, in this community, and in all communities across our nation. Chief, will you bring forward all your officers? This is for them. I can't help but add that this officers being hurt, injured, and killed in the line of duty touches far too many of us personally. And I want to say that my daughter has a brother-in-law, or had a brother-in-law, who was killed in the line of duty in Fort Worth. And it just, it makes it so meaningful to understand the value of what these people do standing between us and goodness knows what. One of the things that we, moving on to item 4H, one of the things that all of us talked about with Linda when we were interviewing her was the need for us to do a better job of getting the word out about what's going on, what are the facts about what the city government is doing, what the staff is doing, what the council is up to, and especially in cases where it's hard to get information out. And she let us know that she believed in that as well, and I think we felt like we'd not done as good a job as we should have, and I know she's dedicated to doing that. We have various media to do that, but we have this wonderful IT staff, TV station, and all kind of video equipment to do that. And so recently I want take responsibility for something. When we passed 3 agreements for to settle some lawsuits, I think we were so relieved, I know I was, to finally get those over with. We didn't really talk about it very much when we came out of executive session. We passed them. We congratulated ourselves with those who we had settled the suits with, but we didn't explain it very well. So I asked Linda if she wouldn't mind thinking it through and work with City Attorney David Bragg to make a presentation that would explain it better. And they did such a good job. Our equipment, our studio is so good that I just felt like if you haven't seen it, everybody needs to see it. So I asked her to please let us see it tonight. And I hope it's the first of many, many of these informative videos, presentations, talks by the city manager and others that will help us better understand, the citizens better understand what we're doing.
Hello, I am Linda Umble, City Manager of Bastrop. Joining me is City Attorney David Bragg. Recently, the City Council approved 3 long-standing lawsuits or claims that have generated questions and/or a level of concern within our community. In an effort to provide additional information on these matters, David and I offer the following perspective. The city recently settled some long-standing issues with the Hoovers and the Van Divers after a lengthy and thorough investigation. Marvin Townsend, as interim city manager and later as a consultant, has spent countless hours investigating issues that resulted from numerous conversations between all parties. Mr. Townsend met with all parties on numerous occasions, having lengthy meetings to understand the concerns. Mr. Townsend met with staff, researched policies, read files, always trying to ensure policies were maintained by all parties. Once those issues were identified and investigated, City Attorney David Bragg evaluated the risk and potential exposure on the part of the city should these issues be tried in court. At no point during this process was staff instructed to cut a deal with anybody based on relationships past or present. Again, countless hours have been spent over the past 7 months investigating these issues with the goal of seeking some type of resolution. This information was presented to council during executive session along with a settlement offer in an effort to ensure that all citizens are held accountable and follow the law, but yet are treated fairly by the city. Council makes policy decisions, which is the authority granted council through the city charter. With the policy perspective, council was presented with historical information that had potential exposure on the part of the city regarding failure to follow existing policies and voted unanimously in open session to resolve these historical issues. These settlement agreements represent amounts believed to be less than the potential exposure to the city should these matters have been tried in court and the city receive a losing verdict. Given the recent conflicts among council members, the fact that these matters were settled unanimously speaks to council's commitment to follow policies and treat all citizens fairly, yet require accountability on a firm but fair basis regardless of relationships past or present. These settlements allow us, as the city, to move beyond our past, reset the clock, so to speak, and ensure internal process and policies are applied in a fair but firm manner and allow both council and staff to focus on our future. Now let's talk about the McCall Ranch settlement. The McCall Ranch and Benign Ranch groups, or Benite Ranch groups, opposed the city's permit for water rights on excess ranch. The initial permit was for 2,000 acre-feet. The city has purchased the right for 6,000 acre-feet. So even though the city was authorized for the first 2,000 acre-feet, there are going to be several opportunities in the future to apply for permits for the remaining water that could be contested by these parties at significant expense to the city. Recognizing that at some point the city began treating McCall Ranch and Benite Ranch groups as an enemy rather than an adversary, Mr. Townsend and Mr. Bragg began to meet with both groups to understand their concerns. After numerous meetings of trying to understand what the real underlying issues were and conducting research, the items to be resolved were determined and evaluated. At the end of the day, the requests made by both McCall Ranch Group and Benite Ranch Group were deemed to not only be reasonable, but the right thing for the city to remedy. It was never the intent of the city to harm any water wells in the area. Discussions determined the possible homeowners that could be impacted once the well is constructed and operational. Remedies now exist in the city's permit and the settlement agreement for a detailed process for homeowners to have to prove a negative impact. The city agreed to increase our mitigation fund from $100,000 to $250,000. No funds will be expended unless a negative impact is proven within a 10-year period. All funds will be returned to the city at the end of the 10 years that have not been used to resolve proven issues by property owners. As previously noted, this settlement agreement was unanimously approved by the City Council in open session. The city wants to be viewed as a good neighbor and known for treating not only its citizens fairly, but those impacted as we develop our future.
I'd like to begin by saying that I agree with everything City Manager Umbel said in her statement just now. I do want to add one thing to that. In the editorial in the Advertiser, a Mr. Glenn Johnson wrote, "It appears only those with friends on city council get paid for their misdeeds." The suggestion that anyone on the city council would pay anyone for their misdeeds is outrageous, and it's completely false. I think it's important for the public to understand that when this series of settlements was negotiated with the McCalls, Van Divers, and the McCall Ranch people, the City Council had no involvement. Marvin Townsend and I conducted those negotiations personally. As with any negotiation, the parties started far apart. Over time and after repeated meetings with good faith being shown on both sides, the parties ultimately came together in something that we thought was in the best interest of the city. It was at that point that it was presented to the council for determination on whether they wanted to agree with it or not. And seeing the settlement terms, knowing the history of the various cases, the settlement had no trouble in reaching that agreement. There is a very significant thing mentioned by City Manager Umbel that I want to emphasize. This was a unanimous vote by the City Council, and it proved something that I've said to many people for a long time. There may be discord on the council, there may be strong disagreement on the council, but when it comes down to what is in the best interest of the city of Bastrop, there is unanimous agreement that we need to do something and move forward for the best interest of this city, and this is a perfect illustration of that. I'm very pleased with the outcome of this and look forward to doing very positive things for Bastrop in the future.
We appreciate your time and interest in these matters. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Linda, staff, David, everybody. I think that's an example of the quality of communication we can produce, and I hope that the council in the future will follow through on encouraging that sort of communication. We move to item 4I regarding council member reports. Bill, anything to report? Gary?
Yeah, I have a couple of things. Number one, we've just announced another Boys and Girls Club event coming up, and it's kind of late in the making. It just kind of happened that Eric Johnson has allowed us to to do a stop of his tour. The only Austin area stop of Eric Johnson's upcoming tour will be here in Bastrop at the Performing Arts Center, June 10th at 7:30. I've left a few flyers at the door, but we'll be getting announcements out through the media so that you'll have the details on that. Secondly, I had a discussion today with our city manager, and we were talking about getting a better relationship between the P&Z Commission and the City Council. As I reviewed the packet for this meeting, I'm looking at some P&Z recommendations, and I'm asking, well, we have their vote that they voted for or against. We have how many voted for, how many vote against. We even know who voted for and who voted against. But what I don't have is why did they vote for or why did they vote against the issue. So I'm trying to make a decision, is this item that's on the agenda for this evening something I should vote for or against? I look at the materials and I make my own decision based on what I see, but I'd really like to know what is the commission thinking. If you look historically at some of the issues that have come up in the past, any time that we have overturned what the P&Z Commission has determined that they think is the right thing to do, and we say, well, we think differently, we get this backlash from P&Z. Why do we exist if you don't listen to what we have to say? Well, we're not hearing what you got to say, so I'm instructing our new city manager, we talked about it today, is up for having more meetings between the council and P&Z so that we're on the same page, that they know what we expect, and that we know what they expect from us. I think going forward, when I've heard some comments from P&Z folks saying that you've got the rules, you wrote the rule book, or your predecessors wrote all the ordinances that you have, and we're just following those. Well, to me, I want a P&Z that doesn't I don't want them just following the ordinances. Yes, well, I do want them to enforce the ordinances. I don't want to mislead you, but I want them to think beyond that. I want them to say, what you're asking for here makes all the sense in the world, but it doesn't meet our ordinances. So we think that council, you should make some changes to the ordinances so that it makes sense for this community. So I'm looking forward to having a new dialogue with P&Z so that they can come to us and say, we think you need to be making some changes in our ordinances, and when they think that our ordinances are fine and they want to enforce them, I want to hear why they should enforce something that might on the surface look like it shouldn't be enforced, that we should award a variance. So going forward, I'm charging our city manager to start putting together some more joint meetings with P&Z, some workshops where we can talk some of these things through and try to get a better read of one another.
Thank you, Gary. Really? Okay.
Yeah, the Just East of Weird Life music series continues this Friday night downtown at Vallejo's. Just like to say, there's also live music at Gracie's and Neighbors and Maxine's and all over town all the time, so we're a very lucky community indeed. We don't just love our visual art, we love our music and performing arts and all the arts. Also, Pine Street Market Days is happening this Saturday downtown from 10 to 4. And you can go there and have lots of fun and crafts and food and lots of bargains. Have fun.
Deborah?
Over the next few weeks, I really am very interested in having our manager and our attorney bullet pointing the information given to the council as to why we make decisions. think it's really important that the public understand that so that there's a deeper knowledge for why we're doing what we're doing, and hopefully clear up some of the misunderstandings and filling in the blanks that we have so that we can all move forward together.
Thank you. I want to say that we've had some conversation tonight about people that are willing to serve on councils and as mayor and all that entails. We've talked about people that have had the courage to run for office. And I think one of the things that's possible is that some people don't run for office because of the risk of losing and the fear of failure. I just want to encourage anybody who's thinking about running for office, and if we don't have people to run for office, we're in serious trouble, let me tell you that. We have to have people willing to do that. And when you run, there's a good chance, or some chance that you'll lose. I know I've lost elections before, and I know how painful that can be, but I never regretted putting myself forward and saying, here I am. If you want me, fine. If you don't, I can find something else to do. I just want to honor everybody who stood for election, and this last and two that are still at it. It is a remarkable gift to our community. I know the challenges, I know the risks that you take in doing it, I know the challenge for you personally, but it is a gift to the citizens of this community that goes beyond the telling, and I thank you all. We have published some dates for the runoff election. Sort of the final date of which is going to be Tuesday, June 6th, following a standard of the county that will run the election. We noticed the early voting starts May 25th and ends June 2nd, but we noticed this week that we had not included in that a Saturday. So one of the things that we are adding to that list, and I hope people will spread the word because it wasn't on our original publications, we're adding Saturday, May 27th. So we'll have a full day Saturday for those people that work out of town, that get back to work late, that live in odd parts of the town and so forth, to come and vote. That follows our tradition of having elections on Saturday. So I appreciate the city manager and the city secretary working that detail out, because we've always included a Saturday in every election we've ever had in this community. By the way, the runoff that we're going to have is the first ever in 185 years of the history of this community. So everybody's making history. Lastly, and least importantly, just on a personal note, I started out my term as mayor with a metaphorical conversation about picking up trash on the street the day that I was sworn in, and saying we need to clean up this community. I hope everybody understood that was a metaphor, that we need to work hard to make the community better, and everybody needs to pitch in. So I want to end on a similar note by inviting everyone to come down to Fisherman's Park on Saturday from 9 to 12, or from some portion in there. We're going to try to reclaim an overgrown portion of the park that could be opened up for use as a park. I hope it's the first day of many. I hope it might even result in a Friends of the Park that will allow us to take advantage of the human resources that we have as volunteers to help Trey and David and their staff to make sure that we have the best parks that we possibly can have. So come down steps from the library if you're interested Saturday morning, and bring your work clothes and some equipment and put your name on it so we don't get it lost, and we'll sign you up and we'll have a good time, and I hope it will produce another metaphor for where we need to go as a community. We need to turn now to the city manager's report.
Mayor and council, I have a few things to update you on. When I began my tenure here, I visited with each of the council members, and during my visit with Council Member Peterson, he raised a level of awareness about the need to have some kind of traffic device in front of the fire station on days when we have peak demand through the community, which now with the construction on State Highway 71 is every day, all day long. So Staff arranged a meeting for us to take that concern to the District Office of TxDOT. They were extraordinarily receptive, and we agreed to fund, as the city, radar detection that will determine that there is traffic blocking the door where the fire apparatus needs to exit in the event of an emergency. And what that will do is cause the light at Main and Chestnut to cycle longer to clear the traffic so that the fire trucks could get out. And so that was very important, and we certainly appreciate Councilmember Peterson championing that. But during the conversation, the question came up about timing the signals along Chestnut from a holistic perspective. And so the state has agreed to conduct a traffic study at the intersections of Chestnut and Main and Chestnut and Pecan. And they will be installing some electronic equipment that will allow those two signal boxes to communicate collectively. And they will be able to sense when we're in an off-peak or an high-peak demand, and they will automatically cycle accordingly, which will allow Chestnut to actually have a longer light cycle, allowing more traffic to come through the community. So hopefully that will better manage the traffic. As everyone has experienced, traffic is an issue and will continue to be an issue for the next 18 months. That's just the opportunities afforded us with progress. Please note that Chief Adcock and his team at the police department, Trey Job and Wesley Brandon, take all of these concerns seriously. Councilmember Peterson reported to us that when we erected, or the state erected, a stop sign at an intersection near his home, there was a lot of red light runners. So the police department got involved, helped educate our citizens to that stop sign, and I'm happy to report that we no longer have stop sign runners. So those are things that are just going to occur as the changes in the construction occurs. Please know that we will work with the state. I can't say enough wonderful things about the TxDOT engineers here. They get customer service. They are so the advocate of this community. I mean, we are so blessed beyond belief to have them. So there's a real partnership between the city and TxDOT, and we will continue to work to make that as painless, as painful as that process can be. I also want to let everybody know that the board and commission process, the application to apply for boards and commissions has been extended to May 23rd to accommodate our new mayor, who will be sworn in next week. As you know, in the charter, the mayor appoints folks to our boards and commissions, and then that appointment is affirmed by the council. If you will go to the city's website, the mayor commented that we need people to run for office. The best way to get involved, to run for office, is to serve on a board and commission. So this is a great way to stick your toe in the water, so to speak, before you run for council. So please note that the deadline has been extended to May 23rd. It is important that you know that to serve on a city board and commission, you have to be a resident of the city. And then the last thing is I just wanted to share that Capital Right Distributing that has been located on Highway 71 in Bastrop has formally announced to the mayor and council that they will be closing their facility here in Bastrop. That will be affecting 63 employees, and they're going to be consolidating their location to Manor. So wanted to make that public announcement. In the event you know somebody that is affected by that, you can certainly reach out for some encouragement. Mayor, that concludes my report.
Thank you very much. We have see where we are. Well, I'm sorry, we've passed beyond that, so we'll.
Citizen input.
Run back to it. So
No, just let them comment during citizens input.
we'd be reflecting on that specifically that was on the agenda.
It's a presentation, we don't typically take comments, so they are welcome to make their comments during citizens input.
Let me say this. Got a couple of people, you know who you are, that signed up for 4-H. I think Linda and I have agreed that it would be appropriate for you to make those comments under citizens' comments. So I'm going to change those to 7. The presentation is not necessarily business, so I'll just keep these. So if you don't mind, I will bring those up under item 7. And on the item that we're moving to now, we have a couple of folks that wanted to speak to that, and if there's anybody else that does, you need to sign one of our forms. And I want to comment just with a little background on item 5A, which is our Tier 3 funding. We set up a process here several years ago that after we had the audit in April or so each year, that we would take a look at our hotel occupancy tax balance and see if there was a way for us to, if we had some extra money available, that we might be able to use it for some specific purposes. We had a organization that came and asked us about that earlier in the year. We set up a process for anybody that wanted to apply for those funds. They did make application. The city manager and her staff have gone through and analyzed that and have a recommendation for us. And I want to, I have a couple of people want to talk, but I want to turn that over to you for our Tracy Waldron, I think you're pointing to say whatever you want to about that, and I'll call on these 2 individuals that want to speak, and then we'll take a look at it all.
So on the agenda, we have each organization an opportunity to present for 3 minutes. So if we can go through each organization, let them present.
And when we offer a recommendation, that recommendation comes solely in the context of council has established a policy, we reviewed the policy, and the organizations listed on your staff report meet the criteria to be eligible to receive funding. And all of them are on there because there is money available to fund all of these requests if that is the pleasure of council. So the vetting and recommendation on the part of staff only is that they meet the criteria provided by the policy you created for the use of this money.
Anything else? Council members, so y'all clear on that? Okay, you're going to the mic.
I'm just going to ask Linda, just so people don't think we're spending money we should be using on something else for these projects, could you just go through what this hot money, how we get the hot money, please, and what it's supposed to be used for?
Well, the hotel occupancy fund is dictated by state law, and it is a policy that is fairly lengthy in its application, and essentially to give you a summary of the outcome of the legislation is it needs to put heads in beds. That's just about as simple as I can sum it up for you. The hotel occupancy fund is an important portion of our economy. The city of Bastrop receives more revenue in sales tax than it actually receives in property tax, and that's very unusual. Because we have been the economic hub for Bastrop County for a number of years, the sales tax dollars really are critical to our well-being. The cities of Smithfield and Elgin are now maturing to a point that they have their own Walmart. They have their own restaurants. And so if we're not careful, what will begin to happen is the erosion of our sales tax. What the hotel occupancy fund allows us to do is to support things that cause Bastrop to be a destination that puts heads in beds. So that's a short version of what's the legislation for. That's a short version of its impact to us. And it's paid for by tourists. It's literally the tax that you pay when you sleep in a hotel room in the city of Bastrop. So it's that sales tax piece that's reinvested. Councilmember McAnally alluded to why this money and why now. When we build a budget every year, I like to say city managers are clairvoyant because we got to look 18 months into the future and pray we get it right. So somewhere in a budget year, you begin to understand whether or not you are going to have excess money or you're going to have to cut back on what you hope to do because things were more expensive. So by the time we get to this point in our budget, we have some sense of how much additional excess revenue over and above what we programmed this year that could potentially be reallocated, because again, the goal is to get heads in beds. So what council is awarding this evening is Tier 3 money that will be spent this fiscal year. So one of the requirements that the applicants had to meet was to prove that their request was going to be spent prior to the conclusion of this fiscal year, September 30th of 2017. Again, with the goal of creating tourism dollars in Bastrop to put the heads in beds.
Okay, Kay. Council members, anybody? I'll call on these two people who want to speak. Laurie Chapin. The city manager's telling me that we told everybody present you didn't have to sign up. So Laurie, I appreciate your signing up. I'm going to wait and follow this list with that new information. And I will find it and follow it down. So first is Bastrop Chamber of Commerce. Yeah, Laurie, stay close by. Becky, introduce yourself, if you will.
Good evening, Council. Becky Wong with the Bastrop Chamber of Commerce. I'm sure you're familiar with the annual Patriotic Festival, now in its 26th year. Again, talking about the lag time and projecting out in your budget, we have to do the same thing when we do our requests because of when our event occurs in the budget cycle for the council. So my request last year was for a standard fireworks show and Austin Symphonic Band that we've done for 25 years. But what we're doing this year is we're expanding this to a 2-day event. I know you probably got a brochure in your packet, but I've got an updated one.
Please distribute that.
Anyways, as you can see from this event, last year when we were shuttling people back and forth from our parking lots, we were amazed at where people came from for this fireworks show that traditionally has been a one-evening show. If you look at the brochure, and like I said, this is just the beginning, we're going to start Friday night with a 5K run, and based on what we saw from a half marathon that we did a few weeks ago, that brings a tremendous amount of people into town for events like that. And we're going to follow it with a traditional street dance. And then we're going to kick off things the next morning with a petting zoo, a water wonderland, all kinds of children's activities, demonstrations like Zumba in the park, some traditional Americana kind of things with pie eating contests and hot dog eating contests. So it's going to be a full day of activities, car show, and so we're making a significant investment in bringing tourism to Bastrop, and so we're asking for some additional funding to cover the cost of that.
Thank you very much. Bastrop Homecoming Incorporated. Didn't know you were incorporated. Oh, I'm sorry.
Since 95.
Please identify yourself. Tell us who you are.
I'm Lori Chapin. I'm representing a much larger group, the Bastrop Homecoming Committee. Our event is held the first weekend of August every year. For the past several years, we have actually started on Tuesday evening, so that's continuing this year, so that will bring in 5 nights of rodeo events. The first 2 nights are no charge admittance, so it's a great opportunity for people to come up with children and just get a real good taste of rodeo. Our actual entertainment starts on Thursday evening and goes through Saturday evening. What Hotel Motel funding does is offer us the opportunity to afford what I call the big name entertainer, the headliner for our event, so that we can still have local musicians and local talent there, but we can also afford that big name person, which we do have one booked for this year, and I can't say who that is yet. Contractually, I can't say who that is. No, we can't until June 1st. Janie just got back from a meeting. The other thing that will be different for this year is that we do have a goal to increase our scholarship awards. We added Cedar Creek in 2013, whenever they had their first senior graduating class. So this year we'll be offering 14 $1,000 scholarships. Last year we did 13. Year before we did 12. So our goal is to add that every single year. And then I really also would like to just leave a little time for any questions that anyone has.
Questions? Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Thank you. Thanks for the opportunity.
Quick. Ms. Sanders says their event puts more heads in beds than any other event in Bastrop. Bastrop Juneteenth celebration.
Good afternoon, City Councilman. My name is Jerome Reese. On behalf of the Bastrop Juneteenth, I would like to thank you guys for this opportunity. The Bastrop Juneteenth has been in celebration in Bastrop for over 40 years. Not to disclose my age, but that's a little older than me. So with your continued support financially, we would be able to continue to provide this service in our community. Just like the other worthy organizations, we also have intentions to put heads in beds. This fund will be used for marketing, social media, some of the events we would like to, newspaper, to bring in visitors into the community. What is Juneteenth? A lot of, to educate, Juneteenth is June 19th. It's a day where we celebrate Afro-American, the ending of slavery, and then also, is that my 3 minutes?
Keep going.
Okay.
Keep going. We're fiddling with the timer here. Go
yes,
ahead.
Sir. Also to educate and promote the community. Any questions?
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. The next item is the Bastrop Opera House. Yes, please come forward.
Hi, good evening. I'm Lisa Holcomb. I'm on the board of directors of the Bastrop Opera House. I don't know if you've been into the facility in the last few months, but if you have, you will have seen that there has been a drastic change in the interior, and it is beautiful. In fact, it's gorgeous. If you haven't, then I invite you to come in and check it out. This came about through some funding that we've received, as well as the hard work of some very dedicated people that have put a lot into making sure that this has happened. We are asking for some additional funding because we do put heads in beds. A good percentage of the tickets that we sell are not just from Bastrop, but from outside of Bastrop County. And we know this because when people buy tickets online, they give us their address, and there's even a spot on there that says, if you're from out of town, where are you staying? And they will put anything from a friend's house to different hotels to the state park to, they get pretty specific as to where they're staying. So we know that they do. And we are asking for additional fundings because we, as our city manager said, Bastrop is a place of art, and we are art, whether it's on the stage or whether it's the art that's displayed on our walls. In fact, right now there is an art exhibition going on in the Opera House. So in order to bring ourselves up to an even better level, we're asking for the funding for some more interior work that needs to be taken place in the form of working on our stage and air conditioning units and so forth. And we thank you for that. Do you have any questions?
Thank you very much, Lisa.
Thank you.
Lost Pines Art League.
Can I bring this
Yep.
down?
Get it to where you're comfortable. There you go.
Good evening, Mayor, City Manager, and council members. My name is Patricia Randulik, and I'm the Executive Director of the Lost Pines Art League and the Lost Pines Art Center. It's the building that's kitty corner from here that lights up with bright colors at night. We have been an organization since 1998, but we opened our doors of the new Art Center in December 2nd of last year, and so that gives us the opportunity to bring in more events and then bring in more tourism to Bastrop. We submitted 3 events or projects, the first of which is our Art Getaway. It's a monthly event that occurs on the 3rd Saturday of the month. The purpose is to bring tourism into Bastrop and to the Art Center. It's an all-day event that includes free activities, beginner classes, music, and a community arts activity. We started this in February of this year, and we've been receiving about 75 to 100 non-duplicated attendees. And so what we're seeking funds for is to advertise outside of Bastrop further to bring people into Bastrop. The second event that I submitted for is for the it's special events, and it shows that our opportunities that aren't available to small communities like Bastrop. One such show that I've put in a request for is called The Upshaws of County Line. It's a show that's educational. It's bringing in a photographer that took 50 pictures, black and white, covering a 25-year period as a documentary to the black communities in Texas. It's something that's not available outside small communities. We would be one of the first ones to have it. And so we want to continue our mission to promote arts and diverse events and bring people in that, on a show like this, that's only available to large cities, so bring people in from other communities. The last event, I need to clarify because there seems to be a little bit of a misunderstanding. I labeled it First Friday Art Walk, but that's not really what it is. Since we've been doing it's really a group theme show. It occurs on the first Friday of every month. We started doing that in 2008, so it's been synonymous with that, so I kind of just automatically linked it. And so what that event is to reach outside, and it's for theme shows of artists in our large art center. And my 30 seconds are up, so I want to say thank you for your support.
Anybody have any questions? I'll certainly allow that. Okay, thank you very much, Ms. Brindley. We now have Neighbors Kitchen and Yard.
Good evening, Council. My name is Rick Brackett. I'm with Neighbors Kitchen and Yard. I think when I moved there 3 years ago, my mission on moving here was to develop Bastrop as a destination music city. I think you've seen from the past 3 years that we've made a major investment at our facility on establishing the music scene for Bastrop, not only for local, but for the tourist in the area to come to Bastrop. We've developed a music series now I call it the fall, the summer, and the spring series. We just finished our spring series. We called it East of South By. We had 9 bands on a Sunday, free admission. We brought a lot of not only local but tourists. Again, we do not manage that because we were not in the hot funds. This was an investment that we made to develop the music scene. So the application that I've submitted here is for our summer series, and that is one that we will have a major headliner, and that we are still negotiating with that band. But not only with the major headliner, it goes a little bit further than that. And as you can see from my packet, I have put a lot of effort into the marketing, digital, social media, Facebook, Instagram, and to really market this outside of Bastrop. I mean, we're talking about in Austin, Waco, San Marcos, New Braunfels area. And another issue that I think I've brought to the table is that we talk a lot about heads and beds. Well, I've developed a form, I think it's in your packet, that we will leave and we will work with each hotel, and we will market and make sure that there are metrics associated with our event to really determine for the council and the city with the post-event analysis that we will have as real data for heads and beds. Any questions?
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Council members, this item is on the floor. It is subject to a motion if anybody cares to make one.
I'd make the motion if just one question with the manager. Is that the total that you're recommending, 154 on your sheet here, Ms. Humble?
Yes, I'm getting a nod from the chief financial officer that
Trish,
she
is that
has added it up, and that's it.
Yes. I moved that we propose this funding on the Tier 3 funding at a level of $154,092.
As laid out on that.
As laid out on this sheet.
Is there a second?
Yeah, I'll second that, and I'll just say that I did check, and everybody has met all the qualifications, and everything's in order, and I wish them the very best in bringing as many heads on beds as they can should this pass.
I think, Gary?
Yeah, I have some concerns, and I've voiced these before. I'm okay with what we're doing tonight, but I still think we need to, well, of course, once we have the DMO, I think things will change. We'll be able to look at the, particularly the marketing efforts that are being done over and over and over again by each of these organizations. And I'm not saying they don't need to be done, but I think once we have the DMO, we'll be in a much better position to share expenses, to leverage the expenses that we have, the advertising that we do, to get the best possible price for the media opportunities that are out there. And so I think in the future, I think when we have our next workshop or when we talk to the DMO, we need to integrate this Tier 2 and Tier 3 finance, these funding requests, into the marketing efforts of the DMO and come up with a new plan.
Let me correct myself. I understand. Let me correct myself by saying that we have, the city manager and I haven't completely gotten on the same page about the agenda. So this is our last one, so apparently we never will. But we did talk about this, and it's my mistake. She just reminded me that we have this posted for action under item 9C. So I'm going to ask for unanimous consent by the council to consider this motion as item 9C, and I'll ask Mayor Pro Tem to make it again. Is it okay? Is there any objection to moving this to 9C right now? Without objection, Willie, I'll ask you to make that motion again. We're now on item 9C, which is the action item regarding this report.
Mayor and council, I'd recommend and make a motion to approve the Tier 3 level of funding at $154,092.
Is there a second?
I seconded it.
Thank you for repeating that. Now, any other comments? I think you understand we're under item 9C. We have heard the reports under the other item, and we are now prepared to vote, I believe. I don't see anyone else going to their microphones. Madam Secretary, will you please call the roll?
Mayor Pro Tem Del Rosa?
Yes.
Councilmember McAnally?
Yes.
Councilmember Schiff?
Yes.
Councilmember Peterson?
Yes.
Councilmember Jones?
Yes.
That's a unanimous vote. Thank you all. And organizations that came to present tonight and for the work you do in our community, thank you very much. This is a partnership between those folks that come and stay here and leave us their money, and you're empowering them to come back and give us some more. Under staff and board reports, we have a presentation from the Bastrop Main Street program.
Mayor, Council, Sarah O'Brien with the Bastrop Main Street program. I feel a little silly because I have literally never been so excited about something to present in front of any of the councils that I've worked for. As someone that's been doing downtown revitalization and community development, I think I was quoted in Pittsburgh at the National Main Street Conference last week, hoping that Annis Reed, the founder of the Texas Main Street program, didn't roll over in her grave, that I believe downtown Texas is the greatest thing to happen to Texas Main Street since Texas Main Street started 36 years ago. I'm super excited and super proud that Bastrop is one of the inaugural cities to participate in this program, and I would be remiss if I did not ask Becca Pitlin to stand up in the back. She has been instrumental in making sure that all of our information is uploaded. When I say night and day, literally, she's been working night and day on this. So just a little brief history. The State of Texas Main Street program that's housed in the Texas Historical Commission started their Town Square Initiative a few years ago. They have a planner on staff, an economic development specialist, and they were trying to figure out what they could do to help cities market and better utilize vacant and underutilized properties. And so downtown Texas is a result of their collaboration and their efforts over the last few years. It is an online database that currently contains information from about 30 cities. We are launching it this month with 12 Imagine the Possibilities tours, which I have posters for if anyone is interested, which is a downtown property tour, a TDA award-winning event that showcases available properties in historic downtowns and connects entrepreneurs and developers with local business resources. So our partners at BEDC, the Small Business Development Center, SCORE, our planning department, inspections will all be on site to answer questions for folks that are interested. So mark your calendars for Thursday, May 18th from 4 to 7 p.m. You can join us at Heritage Hall if you've ever thought about or dreamed about opening up a business on Main Street. So I just want to show you guys very briefly this report, or this website, because I know we have a lot more reports after mine. It's downtowntexas.org. It's very user-friendly. Becca's probably going to yell at me because I'm not doing this the way that she likes it, but that'll be okay. You'll notice when you go down to Bastrop, we've got 133 inventory properties right now. We worked as fast as we could, but this is an ever-growing thing. This website is never going to be completed. We're relying on our partnerships with the Museum and Visitor Center, with the Historical Commission, with all of our realtors and all of our property owners to make sure that we can always have the most up-to-date information. So let's say I am looking for a building to buy. It's going to take us right here for all the properties that are currently for sale in the area that we have entered in the database, which is essentially from farm to water and Walnut to the river. So we're going to take a look at 1006 Chestnut Street. One of the other things that I think is so critical and crucial to this program that the state has given us access to is the amount of information that can be inventoried and cataloged here. There are a lot of smaller cities like Bastrop that haven't had a resource like this available to us. I've worked in bigger cities where we had really robust GIS systems and historic surveys and databases, and I think that downtown Texas gives smaller cities throughout the state of Texas an opportunity to have access to something like this. So as you guys can see, It's got our contact information, obviously, but it also contains photos, history about the property. This property is actually a National Register individually listed. It qualifies for the historic tax credit. We can list the square footage, the sale price, the lease price. Go down even farther, it's pretty much like a central appraisal district information, all in one location for us. So we can have the zoning information on remodels. The possibilities are really, really endless for this. So I know not everyone gets as excited as I am about this, but I really believe that this is something that is really going to change the way Texas cities participate in downtown revitalization, and I think it's something that will be mimicked in other states throughout the country. And so Bastrop, Texas is on the ground floor of this program. Thank you very much. I'll be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you, and of course, the wonderful board that works with you. Item 7 is our citizens' comments. Bonnie Coffey.
Mayor, City Manager, City Council people, I am here to remind you of some fairly important words. Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof or abridging the freedom of speech or of the press or the right of the people peaceably to assemble and to petition the government for a redress of grievances.
Thank you. Glenn Johnson.
Thank you, Mayor, Council, City Manager. I am a Mr. Glenn Johnson. The Texas Lawyers Creed was created by the Supreme Court of Texas and the Court of Criminal Appeals in March of 2013 to govern the professionalism of the legal community. I want to read a paragraph from Section 3, Paragraph 10. I will not, without good cause, attribute bad motives or unethical conduct to opposing counsel, nor bring the profession into disrepute by unfounded accusations of impropriety. I will avoid disparaging personal remarks or acrimony towards opposing counsel, parties, and witnesses. I will not be influenced by any ill feeling between clients. I will abstain from any allusion to personal peculiarities or the idiosyncrasies of opposing counsel. Thank you.
Thank you. And do we have anybody else? This is an opportunity for anybody who wants to speak on a subject that's not on the agenda for action, and I want to give everybody a chance to speak. Okay. There's one more that I'm supposed to have. Let's see if we can find it. Oh, I'm sorry. Betty Peterson. Got it mixed up with our others. I apologize.
Good evening to you all, the mayor, city manager, and the other council members. I'm here to talk about Gills Branch, and it's almost a year that we've had the flood there, and I am looking at no progress there. No one has been there that I know of, and if someone has been working on Gills Branch, I apologize for what I'm going to say. But right now, it is growing up. Even last year, year before last, or whenever they come along and cut the trees or saw the trees and did everything, those trees are beginning to come up again. Also, I've seen that the progress that they are doing is draining water down on more water down on us right now. And also, I look at that the highway back there, which I know that is the state, but I just want to make a comment. They are saying that it is going to, Ms. Peterson, it's going to be nice. You don't have to worry about that. We're going to have it all fixed up. Yeah, you're having it all fixed up. You're bringing more water down on us. Even though not too long ago we had rain, and it was not as severe as it was the last time, but it washed out our driveway, and they said, don't worry about that, we'll get all that fixed, but we're waiting. And we lived there for years and years and never had that driveway to wash out the way that it has washed out before. The only thing I'm asking for, and to see some type of progress to control that water. Now, there's Mount Rose Baptist Church back there. They did a little digging right there, so we're not supposed to worry about the dirt coming there. There's Macedonia Baptist Church right there. They had to fix their church for 2 years, not in a row, but they had to fix it over again. So what we're looking at is some type of drain system that will clean out Gibbs Branch, because it's not getting better, it's getting worse. So I thank you.
Ms. Peterson, let me say that we're not allowed to have a discussion about items that come up under this item. We are allowed to provide information in response. The city manager tells me that y'all have a meeting set up and she's going to provide information to you, and I'm sure it will be available to your neighbors, so I think you can look forward to that in the very near future. Thank you.
Thank you.
Have I forgotten anybody else? All right. We move to item 8, which is the consent agenda, and I will, by our new practice, I'll call on the city secretary to read the captions. And before I do that, let me ask, does anyone want to pull any of these items off of the consent agenda and discuss them separately? Is anybody out in the audience interested in speaking on any of these? Okay, well, keep them on the consent agenda. Please read the captions.
The following is the consent agenda as it reads. Item A, consider action to approve minutes from the April 25th, 2017 meeting. Item 8B, consider action to approve the second reading of ordinance 2017-13 of the City of Bastrop, Texas, updating and amending Bastrop Code of Ordinances, Chapter 10, Article 10.02, entitled Impact Fees, updating the land use assumptions capital improvement plan and amending impact fees for water and wastewater utilities, and providing for an effective date. Item 8C, consider action to approve resolution number R-2017-22 of the City of Bastrop, Texas, establishing a protocol for the consent agenda and establishing an effective date. And that concludes the consent agenda.
All right, we will take a single vote on these items. Is there a motion to approve?
So move.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Will you please call the roll?
Mayor Pro Tem Del Rosa?
Yes.
Councilmember Schiff?
Yes.
Councilmember Peterson?
Yes.
Councilmember Jones?
Yes.
Councilmember McAnally?
Yes.
Thank you very much. Item 9A is consideration of a resolution that is marked R 2017-23, and it's on page, I don't know if we have page numbers. It's page 1 of 9. Or it's 9A, and it's the second page under that tab, if you have a tab. If not, it's the second page under that. This is regarding the purchase of land for a park, and this is a matter that the city manager and Councilmember McAnally have been dealing with. She referred, the city manager referred to it earlier, so who should I call on?
I'm sorry.
We'll start with Linda, then you go. Is that okay?
That's right. I'm going to introduce it, and then you make your comments. Okay.
Is that okay?
Yeah.
Okay.
As we talked about during the acknowledgments of council member accomplishments, one of the things that we indicated was very near and dear to Council Member McAnally was the naming of a park, De La Rosa Park. Well, it's one thing to name any park a name. It is another to find a park that really, I think, captures the spirit and the intent behind the naming. So we got direction from council in executive session about pursuing parkland as close as we could to the Mena Elementary School, where the undertold historical plaque will be installed. So Trey Joe, the Public Works Director, and I, with that instruction, went in search of parkland in the northern part of the community. That was important for a couple of reasons. Both City Council as well as the Park Board have pledged to increase park space in the northern part of our community. That was further underscored the need several months ago. In fact, I think it was the first council meeting that I attended. We had a lady and her two children, and she had actually been hit walking down the street, and she was advocating for sidewalks and park space in her area. So for a lot of reasons, the timing of this just absolutely could not have been more perfect. So tonight on council's agenda is the purchase of 3.06 acres of land that we're purchasing for $119,000 for the purposes of establishing a park. And so I'm going to ask Council Member McAnally to explain the naming of this park, because we will vote on 9A and 9B in tandem, but we'll explain the significance of the relationship between the two. So, Council Member?
Mena Ward School was known as the Mexican School. It was on Main, just north of the railroad tracks. The school only went to 7th grade. Mexican children were not expected to complete more than Mexican-American children were not expected to complete more than 7th grade. But some very dedicated lawyers from San Antonio and some people from Bastrop, 13 families actually, banded together and said, we are going to push for one of the children to go to the white school and receive a full education. The little girl's name was Minerva Delgado, and she represented all of the families that wanted to have their children have the opportunity to have the education that the white kids had. Constitutionally, people couldn't really discriminate. And that's the grounds that they won the case on, because you couldn't discriminate against your own race. Right now, that sounds so archaic and ridiculous, but it was a big deal in 1948. So the little girl started, the little girl's name was on the document that started integration in this area and moved it forward so that all kids could get the education they deserved. So on behalf of that contribution to everyone in this country, because it was one of the first integration cases, the Mexican-American community deserves to be honored because of that achievement. And so the school is no longer there. It's long gone. It was just a one-room wooden facility that actually is kind of a shack. And it's gone, but the very kind owners of the property have said, yes, we'd love to have a plaque there to commemorate Minerva Delgado, her struggle along with the others to get integration. The park with that name on it is a tribute to the Hispanic community who has contributed so much, and the story is not known, which is why we received the Undertold Stories grant. It is a story that not very many people know, and it deserves to be known. It was a struggle, and it was a great achievement of a group of Hispanic people for the whole country. So thank you to them, and thank you to our city manager and this council for wanting to go out and find this piece of property, and I'm hoping that the vote will be positive. Thank you, everyone who had a part in this, and also Senator Gonzalo Barrientos, who has worked really hard with the Historic Commission to get this up. Thank you. And Representative Cyrier, my goodness, he's helped too. Thank you.
Okay, why don't we do these one at a time? Why don't you go ahead and move to buy the land under resolution under 9A, and we'll get a second and then go ahead and vote on it. So, would you go ahead? You're not going to vote? You don't want to make the motion? You want? No, I want you to make the motion for 9A. Which, I mean, you don't have to.
I would love to make the motion that we move for $119,000 for the purposes of establishing a park, authorizing the mayor to execute all closing documents and establishing an effective date.
Is there a second?
Thank you.
Second. And that is on the second page of item 9A. I have a motion and a second. Any discussion? I think everybody we're going to all vote for it. Everybody's for this. We've talked about it. It's great. Will you please call the roll?
Councilmember McAnally?
Sorry, I don't have my thing in. I'm not going to vote on this. Thank you.
Sure. Please vote.
Well, then let me say yes, please. I vote. Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem De La Rosa?
Yes.
Councilmember Schiff?
Yes.
Councilmember Peterson?
Yes.
Councilmember Jones?
Yes.
That's a unanimous vote. And now we have a piece of land that we can name. And I think we've heard the description of the name. And so, Kay, this is on the third page of item 9B, and I'll invite you to make this motion as well.
Thank you. I move that we consider action to approve resolution number R2017-24 of the City Council of the City of Bastrop, Texas, designating the 3.0610 acre property described as Farm Lot 5 E.M. Street, Bastrop, Texas, purchased for the purposes of establishing a park to be named in honor of Minerva Delgado and providing an effective date.
A second.
Any discussion? Again, please call the roll.
Councilmember McAnally?
Yes.
Councilmember Schiff?
Yes.
Councilmember Peterson?
Yes.
Councilmember Jones?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem De La Rosa?
Yes.
Mayor is not allowed to vote yes, but he would were he allowed. Thank you very much, Kane. Thank you for your work on this. We have dispensed with item 9C. Item 9D item 9D is I'm going to turn the chair over to the Mayor Pro Tem for a moment.
Go on.
Item 9D holds public hearing, consider action to approve the first reading of ordinance 2017-14 of the City Council of the City of Bastrop, Texas, granting an amendment to the Pecan Park Residential Plan Development Ordinance 2015-15 for approximately 204.576 acres within the Mosaic Rousseau Survey Abstract Number 56, located at the terminus of Childers Drive within the city limits of Bastrop, Texas, as part of the overall Pecan Park conceptual plan, setting out conditions, establishing an effective date, and move to include on the May 23rd, 2017 agenda for a second reading.
Wesley, pull up mine, please, the PowerPoint.
Mayor and Council, Wesley will identify the issues addressed as with planning and zoning as to why they voted to deny. I find that a picture is worth 1,000 words, and this is as much a learning opportunity for us as anybody. Sometimes when we're presented with a new concept as staff, we can provide a little additional information that makes the conversation a little easier for not only planning and zoning as well as council. So I'm making that asterisk to tell you that planning and zoning has not seen the information we're going to present to you, and it's quite possible that had they had this information, they might have made a different choice. Once this particular amendment was denied, we met with the developer, and after hearing the description of what was proposed, it was intriguing. I don't mind telling you I was curious as to why it was denied. So Wesley and I took a little road trip, so we are going to show you our road trip. And this particular housing option is specifically tied to the request by the developer to amend the planned development to reduce the backyard setback from 15 feet to 10 feet. And Wesley will get into the details in just a moment, but we want to walk through the slideshow so you have perhaps a different context from which to make your decision. So we go to San Marcos, and the reason for the setback is this particular housing option utilizes the land space, which is typically your small lot, with an internal courtyard. And it's a lifestyle choice. As with any housing option that you have, it's about giving the market choices. So to give you the two types of folks that might be interested that immediately come to mind are my husband and I. We don't watch much television. We like to sit outside. I love flowers. It's therapy. And we have a fire pit. So immediately when I walked through the gate, I thought, oh my goodness, I'm going to get to utilize my entire yard here. Imagine if I'm a young mother and my children are out playing in the yard. What you'll see in the next slide is a gate that can be locked. So if I've got kids, I can be in the kitchen. Under the pergola is the kitchen window. I can be looking out the window as my children burn all of their energy running laps around the house, safely enclosed in the property. Wesley, if you'll go to the next one. The entrance gate, and I think as Wesley gets into his presentation, I think this is what's different to us than we typically see. What you see is a standalone garage. So the garage will be at the street level, just like most of the products we're used to seeing. There will be an entrance gate. You see the deadbolt. And in the top picture, you're seeing essentially what is the west side of the garage. On the bottom, you're viewing the east side of the garage, which in my world is flowers and garden. If you have children, it's a sand area. Wesley, go to the next slide. This begins to, I think, differentiate perhaps what we've seen from our standard traditional housing models. The front of this particular model will actually be a hardy plank fence, not your typical wood fence, with the brick columns. So you see the front view and then the side view that shows the hardy plank and the wood column. If you'll go to the next slide. The first picture is the side view if I'm standing in the courtyard facing the side of the house. And then the backyard view is actually the 10-foot setback. You can see that the goal of this particular model is to utilize the yard as an additional living area. In this case, it just happens to be an external living area. This is the back view of the house. Wesley helped me with perspective because being blonde, sometimes, measurements mean nothing to me, but essentially the width or the depth of that porch is 5 feet. That's essentially the amount of space that the developer is requesting from a 15-foot setback down to a 10-foot setback. Wesley, if you'll go to the next one. One of the concerns I believe he will address from planning and zoning is they were concerned about what this would look like from the street view. What we're going to show you is a series of pictures of the 3 houses that were side by side in the neighborhood we went to, and you can see from this particular house, it's a 2-story model. It has a split garage, so that is one look that you will get as you ride down the street. This is the next house that is a 1-story model, and you can see from the street where the gate is, the hardy plank fence, and the garage. Again, it has a solid garage door with attic ventilation on it. The next house next to that is a solid garage, but it has essentially what looks like 2 windows. So as you're riding down the street, these 3 products have a different feel from the street. And those are the elements. So again, what you get is something that says these are different. The most interesting thing for me, and this is the hardy plank with the brick column, an internal fence perspective. If they were to build a house next door, which there's a lot, so I'm sure they would, this is actually what you would see if you were standing in that fence. What was interesting to me about the street view is if I am a pedestrian and I'm interacting with this neighborhood, by having the 2 houses side by side, essentially what you've got is a landscape grouping. And so it almost gives you like a park-like feel. And so as you're riding down the road in a vehicle, the fences are set back, you've got landscaping. And one of the things that when we met with Mr. McDowell was his goal for this neighborhood is to not have a cylinder look to it, so that when you're riding down the road, you feel like you're in a cylinder because every house matches the one next to it with setbacks. So I remembered that, and as I was standing in the street looking at this, I agreed with him. In this instance, I think it is a very attractive way to ensure that in this neighborhood that there are various housing types. So this is the visual tour that we took that I kind of wanted to walk you through, and so now Wesley is going to share with you the concerns that were identified at planning and zoning. What you have are pictures that they didn't have, so I can't speak to whether or not their decision would be different, but this is the information that we wanted to arm you with to make an informed decision this evening.
Thank you, Ms. Humble. Yes, the concerns that the Planning and Zoning Commission had at their meeting on March 30th, which was when this request was heard, had 3 different aspects. So the total request involves 3 different pieces of the amendment that would go along with the current ordinance that establishes the plan development. As Ms. Humble just said, these are the concerns that they had related to the setback reduction from 15 feet to 10 feet. They did not feel that housing type was attractive. That they also felt that the neighborhood wouldn't feel integrated into the city, mainly because of the gate and fence structures that you have around the house. Otherwise, you would see the front porch. Safety issues because that fencing and gate area kind of shields what's going on in the house behind the garage and the fencing. The product type isn't any more affordable than the traditional housing types. During that meeting, the discussion on what was considered affordable or not kind of got to a point where they were discussing the fact that it is 2 separate buildings. And so there was a question on how that could be more affordable than a traditional home that would have unattached garage. And the product type is narrowly focused to a specific market segment. And that mainly had the context of removing or lessening the width of the backyard and how that could affect the market that would want a product like that.
It's important just to provide some perspective. In the neighborhood that we toured, we have verified that 56 of the types of housing that we've looked at have been pre-sold. So again, very clearly there is a market. It's a lifestyle choice. I appreciate not everybody would live in every house, but just for clarification, the developer typically, not the developer, but the builder is typically pre-selling these homes.
So the other two pieces to that request included removing a requirement that's in the current plan development that requires off-street parking within certain land uses within the plan development. There's a ratio of off-street parking that's required based on the number of units. It's one space for every 4 units, and so part of the request is to remove that requirement. The other piece to the request includes an amendment process that would allow for minor amendments instead of having to come back to council every time a small change needed to be made to the plan development to respond to market conditions or other aspects as the project moves on. Their issue with that was the language that we provided as a recommended amendment, and what was defined as a minor amendment was too vague, and that more detailed criteria or parameters were needed. P&Z felt like they needed a little more oversight on changes to a large project such as Pecan Park, and that if that amendment process was granted, it could lead to unintended consequences. Yes, and so one reason that we're recommending the minor amendment process is just the sheer time that it takes to get through the zoning process that we have. Our zoning process is typical of many other cities simply because there are state laws that heavily define what cities must do in order to approve a rezoning request. There's notification requirements and time that has to pass between when we notify the public and when we hold the meeting. There's also the approval or the recommendation of a planning and zoning commission that then gets sent to city council for at least one vote. That is one rather unique thing about the city of Bastrop is our city charter does require 2 readings of an ordinance, which adds to the time that it takes to get through a rezoning process. And so we are recommending that staff and in conjunction with the city manager be allowed to make minor amendments as they're determined to be in the best interest of the city, and if they're not considered a minor amendment, they would be forwarded through the normal process.
Mayor Pro Tem and Council, one of the challenges that y'all discussed with me during my interview process, and I have come to appreciate it in meeting with the development community, is we have a reputation of being difficult to do business with. Part of that is self-induced with this particular process because my filter and my background, having managed the planning and zoning process as well as the council process, from a staff perspective, is it's not unusual for us to be at this point in time where you start tweaking a development, because as it develops, things change, market conditions change, so you need to adapt and overcome. That you have a notice provision, you have a planning and zoning commission that meets twice a month, you have the ability with council to pass an ordinance the first time it's heard, so you can work with a developer to manage the process, the notification, and do it in a relatively short period of time. 50 days to make a developer wait for something that's minor is onerous, and that is part of the battle that we are going to have to overcome in in the months and years to come to begin to change the face of how we interact with the development community. My pledge to you is this, that if we are entrusted with that responsibility, that we will treat it with the trust and care that it deserves, because we appreciate that if we abuse that, not only will we be penalized, but so will our customer. But in the spirit of being able to provide a level of flexibility to accommodate things in the field, I think that this at least gives us a head start in being able to accommodate those kinds of opportunities.
And I would just add that we did send out, as part of that notification process, 21 notifications to surrounding property owners. We actually mailed 2 notices out because when the request was originally heard on March 30th, and they received the denial action, the developer did pull their request from going to City Council when we had originally scheduled it. And so,
Can you say that again, Wes?
well, the original request came through and was heard by the Planning and Zoning Commission on March 30th. And typically when we set up our notification schedule, we assume that it's going to go to the next City Council meeting for action. After that Planning and Zoning Commission, the developer decided to pull their request, and so it wasn't heard by the City Council along with, at the same time that our notification schedule indicated to the property owners that it would be heard. So we re-notified the property owners to make sure that they knew that this meeting was going to be the meeting that the City Council heard the request. And we did receive some notifications in return. We sent out 21 and we've received 5 total back, but 2 of them were from the same person. So I just wanted to, if it's okay, pass those out. I've got hard copies of those notifications.
Usually those are in our pack.
And I can't say why they weren't in the packet. They came between the time we posted the P&Z agenda, and so we passed them out at the P&Z agenda, and somehow they didn't make it into the City Council packet. And I apologize for that, and that's why I have hard copies to pass out.
Can I just say, would this put a hardship on the developer if we toss this back to P&Z so that they can have another look at this?
Yes, ma'am, it sure will. Not to get in too much of his business publicly, but he is trying to manage a contractual deadline, and if we do not act, we could potentially lose an opportunity to maintain a relationship with this builder. So it really is important that this decision be made this evening by council.
Okay. So what I'm looking through here is we have a lot of people who are opposed to this request. Do we know why? I don't see some.
All of the notifications we received were in opposition, but only one, which I received literally before I came to the meeting. That's why I was a little late, because I was printing that off. But there was only one notification that actually included a letter explaining their reason for objection.
The property yard setback, I believe, is in an area where there is no development.
That's correct.
So everybody that will be choosing to buy a house here will be aware of the reduced setback and make a conscious choice to live here. So we are not negatively impacting property owners that back up to here that bought with one assumption and we're changing the rules, correct?
That's correct, yes, ma'am.
Wes, could I ask you a question? Going back, I guess it was early last year we took up this, was it early last spring, before last spring we took up this property, this planned development?
The original planned development was in August of 2015.
Okay. But the discussion carried on a little longer. But in that agreement, and there we go, we're finally showing a picture of, I know there was a lot of discussion about a Section 6.
That's right.
Correct?
That's correct.
And then you brought into the neighbors that were on Perkins Street. And I believe part of the discussion was, if I remember, and Gary, you were well aware of this because you were probably the most vocal on the council of trying to bridge some kind of compromise between the property owners and the developer, and so you might help me out on this. Was the patio homes weren't supposed to be built to anywhere close to 6 or close to the people on Perkins, or where are we talking about building these? They were supposed to be moved more toward behind Walmart.
Well,
in that area?
The original PD was, and I remember that discussion, and what came out of that, from my knowledge, was my recollection was that the two higher density uses, the patio home and what we call our single family classic, or they're the smaller, denser lots, were not allowed in Section 6 because of Section 6's proximity to the properties along the Colorado River.
Can you show exactly where we're talking about on these particular?
Well, the request applies to two different land uses, which could be, other than these two land uses in Section 6, could theoretically be in any of these sections. What limits them on the land uses is the plan development caps the maximum percentage of that land use that can be within the entire development. And there's, for instance...
The reason I asked the question, because you said there were 21 letters that were sent out to residents and 5 responded, and it seemed like, are those the original 21 that were sent out last time we talked about this? Because I noticed 2 at the end of Perkins that responded in on the sheets that you passed out. So were there all the 21 along Perkins Street, or
No,
Maynard Street, or?
The people that were notified were within 200 feet of this entire acreage. So there's 204 acres, roughly 204 acres that encompasses this area of the plan development. Everybody within 200 feet of this boundary received the same notification. So it would have included some properties within the existing sections of Pecan Park, as well as homeowners along Perkins Street, as well as some of the vacant property owners on the northwest side of the development.
So the notification provision requires us to notify about the plan development as a whole, but the areas where this product is going to occur, I know you said intermingled, but in what sections again?
Well, currently, Section 3A, which has already received final plat approval by council, it would fall under the option to have that reduced setback. Any section within this 205 acres would receive the benefit of this amendment. And Section 3 is one that is currently under development that would benefit from this, and there are other sections that could be used for that land use. Mr. McDowell, the developers here, that could probably explain that much better.
One last question, because I'm glad she brought that up, because you were talking about the whole area, and I remember Section 6, and now you're talking about intermingled. Would it be safe to say, for the sake of conversation and the people on Perkins Street that were concerned with these patio homes, if 6 and 7 were left out and the rest of the sections were used for those patio homes, it would probably be more receptive to the neighborhood?
That I can't answer, because I'm not representing the neighborhood, and I can't speak to what they would be okay with.
Could we address Duke on the issue, or could you take the podium? Yeah. So,
how are y'all doing?
Would it be unreasonable to, like we restricted Section 6 from having the smallest, whatever patio homes that you were going to do? Could we restrict Section 6 from not doing this particular scheme?
Yes, it's what you saw up there is Section 3. So Section 3, where you see it right now.
So can we approve this variance strictly for Section 3 then, to get this, to to get you moving.
Right. What we're looking at is the 15-foot setback, right? The product that you saw up there is what would be going in Section 3. Whole different product going in what is really now, so where you see Section 6, that's all 50s and 60-foot widths and lots. But we still need the same, it would be nice to have the same setback because, you know, with a 15-foot setback, you're really starting to impede on people that are trying to build pools already in Section 5 that are having problems getting back there with the pool with the 15-foot offset. So in most cities, you know, the easements on the rear are set at 10. There are no utilities or anything else that are back there along the back side of those properties that would keep those people from either putting a spa or a pool or anything else back there.
Wes, our 15-foot setback, that's the building line includes a pool? You couldn't build a pool within 15 feet of the property line either?
You could build a pool within the building setback. Normally what impedes that is a public utility easement that's
okay.
here. And we wouldn't typically allow a pool to go inside a public utility easement.
All right, is there a public utility easement behind all these homes?
I believe there's a 5-foot public utility easement, and that's you know, just one of our standard.
But wouldn't that be there whether you have 5 feet or 10 feet or 15 feet or?
Yes, it would.
So I'm trying to figure out what the issue is with how the 15-foot or a 10-foot setback would change somebody putting a pool in. How does that affect a pool? I don't get it.
Well, typically in most cities, you cannot go past a building line with any type of permanent structure that would go in. So that 15 feet would be considered a permanent structure, or 15 feet would be the permanent setback in the rear that you could not impede into.
Yeah, but Wesley just said you could go up to 5 feet with a pool. Isn't that what he just said? Yeah, so it's not an issue.
Yeah, okay, I've never heard of that in most cities. So
it sounds to me like you really don't need a variance for somebody that wants to put a pool in. I guess the issue is if we grant this 10-foot variance everywhere, then you're going to have this that rear setback, the ability to build the house right up to 10 feet from the property line. And in some of the areas with the larger lots, I could see the people in adjacent housing not appreciating the houses being, I guess, pushed so close together at the rear. And I don't know, because I don't see I don't have a layout of your whole development to know whether will there be any houses facing the existing neighbors on Perkins Street, or are they all inward facing? All right, so if they're inward facing, I'm not sure how that would affect the neighbors. I suppose the neighbors, if you got 15 feet or 10 feet, the difference of 5 feet, that's a fenced community, is that right? The whole thing?
There's actually more space between the rear of the property and our actual property line. That averages, Wesley, between 20 and sometimes as much as 50 feet between the actual property line and where the actual property line is from our property line, which is common space between that and the back of these houses.
So you have some green space around the whole property. Okay, I don't see a problem there.
It's actually more than that. It's along here, it ranges from, I believe, 50 feet at its minimum width and tapers out to roughly 80 feet.
My thought on this whole, I'll lay out kind of where my head is going on this thing, and that is, this development is a standalone development, kind of out in the middle of nowhere. There's like 2 or 3 houses that are close to this whole development. Once you run this border around it, the fence that separates this from the rest of the neighborhood, kind of what happens inside the neighborhood becomes the issue of the neighbors inside that neighborhood. So my conclusion is that if you build a certain type of house in that neighborhood, and that's what you're building there, and somebody comes up and wants to buy one of those houses, and they look up and down the street, and they don't like to see all those garage doors, they won't buy in that section. They'll buy in a different section. It's not like if this was downtown Bastrop, and we were concerned about some consistency of the neighborhoods, trying to maintain the rules that the last guy had, the next guy has to follow those rules as well, so you've got consistency, I'd say those kinds of things ought to happen and should happen, and that's what zoning's all about. If you're doing a new development where everything is new, there are no standards of what was there before, but you're putting a product on the market that defines this is what this neighborhood's going to look like, you either decide to live there or you don't, and you're not really affecting some existing community. And I personally, the pictures that I see, the pictures that were brought to us today, I think it's a very attractive neighborhood that fits a certain market. If it didn't fit a market, they couldn't sell them. So, if you want to live there, you buy a house there. If you don't like what you see, you don't buy there. And I'm inclined to go along with this. And in fact, if we're ready to make a motion, I'll move that we approve this.
I second.
I'd just like to say that this brings up a real challenge for us, because we have a group of people that are on planning and zoning that work very, very hard, and if they're not given the information and have the ability to see what we see, then I think you're right, Gary, for what you said earlier, because this is really
I agree. This never should have gotten to the point where it is today.
Yeah.
That we're seeing information that, I went through this and I talked to Linda earlier today. I said, I don't see a thing wrong with this. It looks like a very nice subdivision. It's isolated. It's its own thing. Obviously, it's sellable, or they wouldn't build it. And that's why I couldn't understand why planning and zoning, but now that I understand that they didn't see most of this material, or the pictures and the visual of what this was, I can understand that they were confused.
Councilmember McAnally, I'll take full responsibility for that and tell you you're absolutely correct. It shouldn't happen, but when you enter a production that's in the third act, you have to play the hand you're dealt. What I don't want is for the developer who, after meeting with him, is passionate about bringing quality to the community, passionate about protecting his name, to be penalized for the fact that we are changing our process midstream. Wesley and I have had some real soul-searching conversations about how we can put planning and zoning in a better light, because having been Wesley, I never want people that volunteer, that bring forward their perspective, to ever feel like their voice doesn't matter, because it does. In this instance, we've learned some valuable lessons. We have already today made changes in our process so that the next time an item goes to planning and zoning, there will be a different way we provide the information, and when we find new things, that should be a clue to us that we need to take a road tour, because a picture's worth 1,000 words. I also, after visiting with Councilmember Schiff, and it was his call to me this morning was very timely, because Wesley and I were having the conversation. I appreciated him voicing from a policy perspective the very thing that we were feeling as staff. The Planning and Zoning Commission is a policy body that was established to provide policy perspective. And I think as we grow and as we take this journey, the joint workshops that Councilmember Schiff proposed this evening become critically important, because as we get educated, some of the things that we believe to be true will be challenged, and that's a journey that we can take together. Councilmember McAnally, I appreciate your concern for planning and zoning. I share that concern. I'll take the hit for this one and tell you that in the future we will do a different job to provide that level of education, but I would respectfully request that we not penalize the developer in this case by sending it back for things that clearly staff can take responsible for, will take responsibility for, and will do better in the future.
Councilmember Schiff said he made a motion on item 9D. If I get a second, I'll read the ordinance before we take a vote. Okay. Oh, okay, I'm sorry. We had a motion by Councilmember Schiff and second by Councilmember Jones. I'll read the ordinance of the City Council of the City of Bastrop, Texas, granting an amendment to the Pecan Park Residential Plan Development Ordinance number 2015-15 for approximately 204.576 acres within the Mosaic Rousseau Survey, abstract number 56, located at the terminus of Childress Drive within the city limits of Bastrop, Texas, as part of the overall Pecan Park conceptual plan, setting out conditions and establishing an effective date. Madam Secretary.
Councilmember Schiff?
Yes.
Councilmember Jones?
Yes.
Councilmember McAnally?
With the greatest respect to the work that P&Z does, I just have to trust that if they'd had the same information, they would vote yes, and because of that, I will say yes.
Councilmember Peterson?
Yes.
4-0 vote. Continuing on with item 9E, hold public hearing, consider action to approve the first reading of ordinance 2017-16 of the City Council of the City of Bastrop, Texas, granting a conditional use permit to allow a one-story church administration building for 0.44 acres of Farm Lot 1 east of Main Street, located at 1208 Water Street, within the city limits of Bastrop, Texas, setting out conditions, establishing an effective date, and move to include on the May 23rd, 2017 agenda for a second reading.
Thank you very much, Mayor Pro Tem. Yes, we received a request from the First United Methodist Church to be granted a conditional use permit in order to construct a new church administration building on a piece of property that they own at the northeast corner of Water Street and Beach Street. Currently, the church owns all of the lots within the block that encompasses Main Street, Water Street, Beach Street, and Farm Street. The conditional use permit request applies only to the property located at the northeast corner. The request would, if granted, would allow the construction of a roughly 1,900 square foot building that would be used by the church for administrative purposes. The zoning for the property is within the form-based code area. It's got it has a neighborhood zoning designation, which is why they have to request a conditional use permit. The request was heard originally at the March 30th Planning and Zoning Commission meeting. The Planning and Zoning Commission decided to postpone action on that item because representatives from the applicant weren't in attendance, and there were questions that staff was not able to answer, and so they felt it necessary to postpone the request. They did hear the request at their last meeting in April and voted to approve the conditional use permit with a few conditions, and those conditions are that that the east-facing facade of the building be constructed to appear as residential in nature as possible. One sort of unique piece to this building is that it would actually be built to have its main entrance facing inward toward the rest of the church's property. And so that was discussed at length at the commission's meeting, and we recommended that steps be taken to make sure that this rear facade be built to appear as much as, to look as much like a front facade for a residential structure as possible. And so one step that would need to be taken if the CUP was granted by council would be to submit a engineered site development plan and building plans that would be needed to obtain a building permit before any work is done on the site. And so at that time, we would study the elevations and make sure that they meet the residential standards of the form-based code, and that they provide the features that are required to look like a residential structure. The other conditions that were recommended by the Planning and Zoning Commission were that the building only be used for church administrative uses only. That would prohibit any kind of soup kitchens or additional uses that churches sometimes have. They want this to only be used as an administration building. The last is that they add at least 4 new parking spaces to serve the building. Currently, the church owns other properties that have that they utilize for their parking areas. They have an existing parking area that's not able to be seen on this aerial. It's under the tree, but they would utilize the other parking that the campus uses for their other routines. And so the one condition would be that 4 new spaces are added to serve this site in addition to what's already there.
Wesley, what kind of spaces would they be? Are they concreted in, or what will they look like a business, or will they look like the area around a home?
They would, according to the site plan, they're actually showing the parking spaces being placed along Water Street. So they would be parallel spaces that are, this is Water Street. If you're looking at the top of this drawing, the 4 spaces would be installed in front of that western or that eastern facing facade. So they would be along Water Street, not within the site.
Okay, I get that, but they would be along Water Street anyway, since we have parking. They would be on that street anyway. So we're just requiring them to move it inward off the street a little bit so that it doesn't impede the traffic on the street. Is that the deal?
Well, they would be built according to the cross sections that are shown in the form-based code, which would actually have those spaces well outside of the what we would call the travel way.
I see.
Which is kind of what's out there now is just a standard roadway width, and people do park on it, but it's not really adequately built to handle parking as well as that two-way traffic along Water Street.
But it will still, that parking space will still be built in the spirit of having a neighborhood, not a business parking lot looking thing, right?
They would be standard paved parking spaces that we see elsewhere within the city. Yes.
Pardon me?
Downtown.
I asked him, did he see it downtown, which is your question.
Yes.
Okay.
So you'd see it downtown or...
Okay, I guess the form-based codes will be sure that it has the look and feel that, I just worry about, never mind. Thank you.
What it will do is provide similar parking to what's downtown, which is, I think, what you're getting at, is we don't want it to become institutionalized.
Yes.
We want it to reflect the downtown that we have, and I believe that's what you're saying it will do.
Okay.
Councilmember Scheer.
Yeah, I noticed that there were a couple of oppositions in the neighborhood, and I talked to Martha Harris, former councilwoman, who lives 2 doors down from this, and she said, well, she opposed it when it first came up, She didn't know what it was going to be, and she didn't want this office building looking thing there. But then she went to the second meeting, and they brought some plans showing that it was very residential in nature, and she said she doesn't have a problem with it, that it's fine. And I think it looks very appropriate for the neighborhood, and I move that we approve it.
We have a motion and a second, and I'm going to ask one question. This is a public hearing. If anyone in the public want to make a comment on this particular item.
I withdraw my motion. I can't move during a public hearing.
He withdrew his motion, so like I said, is there anybody in the audience wants to address this particular item? If not, we're going to close this public hearing and ask for a motion.
I move that we approve this zoning variance.
Got a motion by Councilmember Schiff and a second by Councilmember Peterson. Madam Secretary?
Councilmember Schiff?
Yes.
Councilmember Peterson?
Yes.
Councilmember Jones?
No.
Councilmember McAnally?
Yes.
We have a 3-1 vote on item 9E. Thank you.
Item 9F is no item. Is that right? We are now on item 9G, which is a resolution regarding our financial management policy, and I assume we want Tracy Waldron? Yeah, apparently we do, yes.
So in the packet, you have a resolution that is including an amendment to add a little more structure and policy on the hotel occupancy tax fund. And if you remember at our April 25th meeting, y'all had a workshop and this topic was discussed. We have brought back language that is added to the financial management policy, which establishes sufficient level of reserves that would be equal to a minimum of 1 year of expenditures.
Mayor and Council, our current fund balance in the hotel occupancy fund meets the 1 year requirement, so by passing this, it's not a question of making choices. You are already there. To give a scope of magnitude, it's roughly about $3.1 million that we would hold in reserve. Just to reiterate something that I mentioned earlier in reference to Councilmember McAnally's question about hotel occupancy fund. The reason for 1 year in reserve goes back to the dependence we have on sales tax, and it would be critical that should that amount drop off, that we have the infrastructure in the bank to maintain that level of funding for about a year or so, depending on when it occurs. The reason we did not bring you exact numbers is we are just now in the early stages of developing a budget, so to suggest what it might be next year is a little premature, but we've done rough calculations to be able to represent to you this evening that we do have 1 year's fund balance already, and it will be in the neighborhood of $3.1 million.
I move that we approve Resolution R2017-26, amending the financial management policy of the City of Bastrop to include policy on hotel occupancy tax fund reserve balance and establishing an effective date.
Second.
Any discussion? Okay. Okay, that's okay. Hearing none and seeing no one rushing to the microphone, I'll ask the city secretary to call the roll.
Councilmember Schiff?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem De La Rosa?
Yes.
Councilmember Peterson?
Yes.
Councilmember Jones?
Yes.
Councilmember McAnally?
Yes.
This item 9H affects Councilmember Schiff, and so he has recused himself, filled out the proper paperwork, and has left the dais. I will ask the city manager to explain this.
Mayor and council, if you will recall, several weeks ago, Resolution 2017-13 was approved, and in an effort to streamline future precedents, we would like to submit this resolution that will act in the form of a precedent-setting resolution, because at the heart of this matter is something very simple, and that is that by charter, the city attorney is given the authority to serve as legal counsel for the city. The ethics ordinance precludes him from doing that in one instance. And in that instance is if a member of the city council or an appointed member of staff that would go before the ethics commission, the ethics ordinance precludes him from being able to offer any type of defense. So, say for instance, I was find myself in a situation where I would have an ethics violation before the commission. If the city attorney cannot represent me, then I have no choice but to hire legal counsel. So what we're saying is absent any background noise, the only item that matters is the ethics ordinance precludes the city attorney from acting in his official capacity in that instance. So we wanted to clean the language up so as to eliminate any confusion as to why this reimbursement happened. The essential element here is unless the Ethics Commission, which you have appointed to be due process for this, finds the violator guilty or whatever they choose to assign to that. If there is a violation, then they would have to pay their own attorney fees. Absent a violation, they should be entitled to reimbursement because the normal method of defense is precluded from being provided in this situation. So just to essentially untangle us from any perceived political issue, we wanted to go back to the root cause, and this is policy driven by an ordinance that exists and has been approved. And so what we want from a precedent setting perspective is to adopt this ordinance because that's clearly what it says, repealing 2017-13 so that there's no confusion as to why council approved this. These expenses has already been reimbursed. So all this really is cleaning up precedents for the future.
All right. Thank you for that explanation. Is there a motion regarding Resolution R 201721?
Mr. Mayor, I'll make a motion to approve Resolution number R 2017-21.
Is there a second?
I'll second that. You have to read this.
Do we need to read this whole thing?
Resolution?
It's currently not. Is there any discussion? I'm informed that Councilmember McAnally will abstain from this vote. So will you please call the roll for the other three?
Mayor Pro Tem Dela Rosa?
Yes.
Councilmember Peterson?
Yes.
Councilmember Jones?
Yes.
That's a 3-0 vote. Thank you very much. Item number 9I has the similar explanation. I will explain that Councilmember Jones is leaving the dais. She has recused herself in written form as is necessary because this item involves her. This is Resolution 201719. Is there a motion to approve it?
Move for approval for resolution number R2017-19.
Thank you very much. Is there a second?
Second.
Mr. De La Rosa, Mayor Pro Tem, seconds. Any discussion? Again, I'm informed that Councilmember McAnally will abstain from this vote, so will you please call the roll for the other three?
Councilmember Peterson?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem De La Rosa?
Yes.
Councilmember Schiff?
Yes.
Thank you very much. Hope that clarifies things. I'm going to invite Councilmember Jones back into the chamber. And I note that we have no executive session tonight, so I think that probably pleases
move for adjournment.
Everybody in the room. There's a motion to adjourn. There's a second. All in favor of that, say aye. Aye. I hear 5 ayes and no. Any noes? No noes. We stand adjourned. Thank you all very much.